The tale began with the protagonist immersed in a video game where a menacing skeleton addressed the knight, declaring him truly worthy of being his rival. The skeleton remarked that indeed the rumors were true and that the title Nightmare of the Continent suited him perfectly. Yet, he added, as long as the forces of light stood by their side, they would never surrender. Sung Hyun thought to himself that this was both a terrifying immortal king and a noble knight of light. He sipped on his soda, wondering aloud if their dramatic clash was a bit overdone. Still, he acknowledged it was just a performance. But how had things ended up this way? Even this unlucky guy stuck in his closet watching it all unfold, wasn't that also him? Before long there was a knock at the protagonist's door. A staff member, holding a pen and a piece of paper, introduced himself as being from the Special Ability Control Bureau Relocation and Investigation Department. He asked if Sung Hyun was present. The protagonist confirmed with an eager expression. The employee explained that his identity had been verified and requested that, should he awaken, he report it immediately to the Special Abilities Control Bureau. Sung Hyun reflected that it was the first time he had spoken to a stranger in half a year. Now that the conversation was over, he figured he wouldn't need to open the door for another 6 months. It had been 2 years since he last stepped outside. Some might call him pathetic. Others might accuse him of lacking willpower. But in truth he saw himself as a casualty of a twisted world. Suddenly the TV news caught his attention. A reporter announced that firefighters were battling a blaze at a shopping mall. The arsonist, it was said, was an awakened individual who had started the fire before transitioning to another world. Sung Hyun stared at the screen in shock, thinking, an awakened person. Not long ago, people all over the world had begun awakening one by one, developing mysterious abilities referred to as special powers. After awakening, individuals were forced into another world within 24 hours, returning only after meeting specific conditions. However, very few ever came back alive. Desperate and hopeless, many of the awakened resorted to committing senseless crimes before their inevitable departure. 2 years ago, a reckless prank by one such awakened person had cost Sung Hyun both his family and his leg. Though he had tried to muster the resolve to start anew, the effort seemed futile. At one point he sat on a specialized exercise machine attempting to work his legs. He slumped down, exhausted, asking himself what the point of all this was. Why was he so afraid of stepping outside? Perhaps with just a little more determination something might change. Maybe he could leave this place and go somewhere, anywhere. Suddenly, a translucent system window materialized above his head. It displayed a message, dimensional distortion detected. Connection to the Akasha system in progress. Awakening of a unique skill. The unique skilled avatar had been awakened, and a countdown began. 24 hours remained before transitioning to another world. Sung Hyun cried out in terror, exclaiming that this must be some kind of joke. How could it all happen so abruptly? The system window displayed a warning. Failure to enter the travel portal within the allotted time would result in a forced transition. With a panicked expression, Sung Hyun flung open his closet. He recalled hearing that returning to Earth took about a year, and with time in the other world flowing 10 times slower, this meant he'd have to endure 10 long years there to get back. Eventually, the protagonist, now clad in full gear, stood nervously before the glowing portal. The system window informed him that 3 minutes remained until the transition. Gripping his head in distress, Sung Hyun thought, I can't even step outside normally, and now there's a portal in front of me. I have no strength, no skills. How am I supposed to survive in another world? Suddenly he remembered his unique skill. Sung Hyun shouted, determined, activate the avatar skill. At that moment, a clone materialized before him. He stumbled back in shock, gasping, that's me? Staring at the figure, he realized he was looking at a perfect copy of his own face. The clone saw everything he did as though they shared the same vision. This is dizzying, Sung Hyun muttered, trying to move and control the avatar. The realization hit him. It was impossible to act simultaneously with the clone. Then the system window chimed again. 1 minute remained until the transition. Failure to step into the portal would trigger a forced move. In desperation, Sung Hyun slumped against the clone's chest. This avatar is useless, he groaned. Just like me. If only someone else could take my place. Acting on a sudden impulse, Sung Hyun directed the avatar toward the portal. The system window acknowledged the identity of the awakened individual, confirming the start of the transition. Watching the avatar vanish into the portal, Sung Hyun cried out in astonishment. It worked. The moved portal had accepted the avatar instead of him. The system window updated. The transition to the Auterica dimension was complete. Moments later, Sun Hyun found himself looking at a dense forest. His heart raced with fear. The avatar was supposed to go. Why am I here? But then the system clarified. He could return to Earth via the return option in the karma store. However, karma needed to be earned through adventures and his current karma was at 0. Sun Hyun's vision suddenly blurred. Realizing he wasn't physically in the forest but instead seeing through the avatar's eyes, he shouted, "I'm going to be sick." The nausea overwhelmed him and he abruptly woke up at home, sprinting to the sink to throw up. A few moments later, he sighed in relief. "At least I survived the move," he muttered. Gathering himself, Sun Hyun added with determination, "Summon the avatar here." A double appeared before him, and as it approached, the protagonist asked in frustration what he was supposed to do with such a useless ability. Suddenly, a system window appeared, announcing that he had achieved something remarkable, returning to Earth without using the karma store. As a bonus, he was granted the ability to teleport back once daily to his previous location using a portal. Additionally, his karma had increased. Sun Hyun was stunned, realizing that he had become the first awakened individual to return to Earth so quickly. The system window displayed his balance: 1,910,213 karma points. His jaw dropped in shock. Could this much really be awarded just for sending the avatar? In one move, he had earned points equivalent to 10 years' worth of effort. The system explained that karma is granted based on a person's impact in another world, whether through good deeds, misdeeds, murders, or honest labor. It made no distinction. Accumulated karma could be spent on improving abilities or returning to Earth. Sun Hyun wondered if there had been some kind of mistake. What if he was still required to travel back to another world? Then, with a wry smile, he said, "Well, I didn't expect this to work, but who cares?" Turning to the system window, he noted that returning to Earth seemed pointless since he was already here. The system offered a suggestion: improving his unique skill for 300,000 karma or exploring other status enhancements. Intrigued, Sun Hyun asked to see the details of the status upgrade section. Opening the tab, he saw an option to enhance regeneration for 10,000 karma. What is regeneration? He wondered aloud. Curious, he pressed the button. Instantly, a strange sensation coursed through his legs. Sun Hyun looked down in amazement. His legs had been fully healed. The injuries that had defined his life, the source of his pain and isolation, were gone. This wound had been more than an inconvenience. It symbolized his tragic farewell to his family and his retreat from the world. Now it was as if none of it had ever happened. The system updated his status, informing him that his regeneration ability had surpassed the standard level 1 threshold. He had gained a new skill, super regeneration, which significantly enhanced his recovery powers. Later, Sun Hyun smiled as he exercised his legs on the simulator. Reflecting on his progress, he marveled at how the karma he had earned not only restored his legs but allowed him to grow stronger. Watching his productive training session, he admired how much power his legs now had. With plenty of karma still left, he pondered where to invest it next. Spotting the option to enhance his unique skill, he eagerly clicked on it. As he activated the system window, he wondered aloud, what can I achieve by improving the avatar's skill? After some time, Sun Hyun stood before his upgraded clone, grinning. "You're a real man," he said. The double, admiring its new physique, remarked, "You've put in some serious effort, haven't you?" Sun Hyun chuckled, replying, "It's all thanks to hard training." After awakening the avatar skill, Sun Hyun realized his consciousness had split in two, allowing him to move freely. Along with this, he gained a new ability to enhance his weapon skills. The system window explained that, with the mind center, he could choose what information to receive. Sun Hyun thought, this means I'll no longer experience disorientation, and even if the avatar gets hurt, I won't feel any pain. Grinning, he grabbed a gamepad and remarked that he could now explore another world while comfortably sitting at home wrapped in a blanket. As he considered his newfound control over the avatar, Sun Hyun noted that it felt just like playing a video game. But this wasn't the only change. Now he had 3 avatars. Pondering aloud, he wondered if their numbers would continue to grow as he developed the skill. This could get confusing, he muttered. I can't just keep calling them avatars. I need names. Looking around for inspiration, his gaze landed on a ketchup packet on the table. The first clone, he declared, will be called Hans. The system window updated, showing Hans's abilities: general skills, mind center, super regeneration, individual skills, mana attraction. Note: first avatar is Sun Hyun. Turning to the second clone, Sun Hyun named him Heinz. The system displayed Heinz's abilities: general skills, mind center, super regeneration, individual skills, survivability. Note, second avatar is Sun Hyun. Sun Hyun couldn't help but comment, mana attraction and survivability? What kind of bizarre combination is this? Then with a grin he added, well, it's time to complete my long-awaited quest. Settling on the couch, Sun Hyun began controlling his clones. He sent Hans to teleport to another world, while Heinz took a bag of garbage and stepped outside. As Sun Hyun switched his attention to Heinz, he saw sunlight streaming down and marveled that he felt no anxiety. The mind center is working perfectly, he thought. Hans must already be in another world by now. Switching control to Hans, Sun Hyun observed that it was nighttime in a seemingly tranquil forest. It's so quiet, he murmured. Just then, a black panther emerged from the dense foliage. Startled, he exclaimed, how did that thing show up out of nowhere? The panther lunged, but Hans quickly unsheathed his sword and drove it into the beast's mouth. Sun Hyun noted with satisfaction, exactly as I expected. No fear or pain. Just like a game. Hans withdrew the sword and finished off the panther. Sitting beside the panther's lifeless body, Hans muttered, is it this hard because I haven't leveled up yet? I'll be in big trouble if I run into another monster. Scanning the area, he spotted a small settlement in the distance. A short while later, Hans arrived at the village, where he was greeted by a villager named Glokali. Smiling warmly, Glokali welcomed him, praising his courage for navigating the monster-filled forest at such a late hour. Hans grinned, gesturing to his injured body. I've got wounds all over me. Elder, do you think I could stay in the village for the night? Glokali nodded with a kind smile. Of course, he said. We should always help each other. Hans exhaled with relief and gratefully thanked the elder. A short time later they were walking through the village, passing by the houses. The elder commented that it was the first time he had seen such clothing and equipment, asking if Hans had come from far away. Hans chuckled. I got a little lost. Kept walking and somehow ended up here. The elder smiled warmly. It's nice to meet someone new after such a long time. How about we share a drink at the tavern? Later that night, Hans lay on a bed, smiling to himself. They even gave me a room here, he mused. The longer he stayed, the more he thought about how kind the villagers were. How long has it been since I felt so happy talking to people? Today really was a good day. Meanwhile, the protagonist sat on his couch, holding a mug of alcohol. This is great, he said aloud, savoring the feeling. Eating chicken after a shower, pure bliss. Traveling around the world like this is amazing. Feeling a pang of guilt, he added, I'm embarrassed though. Hans is working so hard out there. He reflected that Hans was practicing his survivability. I don't know when I'll have to send him away again, so it's good he's preparing. With a smile, Sun Hyun concluded, this is fantastic. But no matter how much my clones accomplish, I need to learn more about the other world. What kind of place is it really? He opened his laptop, smiling as he thought, I'll be a great leader. Suddenly, a system window appeared, declaring, Avatar is dead. All skills and data acquired by the avatar will be reset. Sun Hyun froze in horror. Hans died. He pointed at the system window, panicked. He died in that village. Could it have been that old man's doing? Did he slip something into the drink? He shook his head, frustrated. How careless of me. Then a thought struck him. Wait, am I reconnecting to the avatar? At the same time, back in the village, Glokali stood with another man near Hans's lifeless body. I thought he'd be useful, Glokali said, but he turned out to be just an empty shell. He managed to get through the forest alone, so I thought he had real potential. But in the end, he's just another elite skeleton. As Sun Hyun began to control Hans's body again, he wondered in shock, what's happening here? The system window popped up, stating, race changed to undead. New skill acquired, decomposed heart. Hans's updated profile read, race, undead. General skills, mind center, super regeneration. Individual skills, mana attraction. Note, the mind center prevents mental damage. Sun Hyun's thoughts raced in panic. What is going on? Glancing to the side, he spotted a large number of skeletons behind a glass wall. Fear gripped him as he realized, could it be that these lunatics turned all the villagers into undead? Just then, a living man entered the basement. Who is this? Sun Hyun wondered. Wait, isn't that the guy from the tavern yesterday? The man, visibly annoyed, grumbled, how much longer do I have to stay in this dump? His gaze shifted to Hans's body on the floor and he stared at it intently. The protagonist anxiously wondered what the man was staring at. Did he really notice I've come to my senses? The man pointed at Hans's body with irritation and grumbled, "Why is this knucklehead still here? Why do I have to redo what everyone else has already done? Move the skeleton's body over there." Sun Hyun felt a jolt of worry. "Even though my heart isn't beating, I think I almost had a heart attack." He could feel a strange force trying to move Hans's body against his will. By concentrating, he managed to resist the pull, but he decided it was wiser to obey for now. The man muttered with frustration, "Why does the old man always make me check on these weirdos? What a meticulous pain in the neck." Sun Hyun reflected nervously. "This force, it feels so familiar. It's the same one that moved my dead body earlier. Could it be linked to the mana attraction skill?" His thoughts raced. "If that's the case, maybe I can figure out how to control it. And if I can control this force, I might be able to take command of all the other undead too." 1 week later. In the dim basement, Hans's undead body sat on a stack of wooden boxes, his skeletal fingers twitching with faint magical energy. Across from him, a skeleton lay crumpled on the floor. With a flick of Sun Hyun's will, the skeleton stood up stiffly, moving as though animated by invisible strings. Sun Hyun grinned. "I finally did it. I can control others now. Although it's not exactly what I imagined. I can only influence one undead at a time, not a whole crowd. Guess an elite skeleton like me isn't capable of much more yet." Suddenly, the sharp hiss of a rat caught his attention. He snapped forward, grabbing the small creature in his bony hands. "So, it was this little pest gnawing at my heels all week? You're a fast and nimble one, aren't you? A tiny nasty thing." An idea struck him. "What if I use my magic on something small and fast like this rat instead of a person?" He focused his mana, and the rat's eyes glowed an eerie red. Sun Hyun carefully set it down, grinning. "Operation Night Watch begins," he said to himself. "Let's see what secrets I can uncover with this little spy." Outside the warehouse, through the rat's glowing eyes, Sun Hyun observed a man pacing outside. "Why is this guy whining so much?" he thought, amused. Then the man opened a heavy wooden door, revealing a second, dimly lit warehouse. The rat scurried forward, darting toward the open passage. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through the air, halting its progress. Sun Hyun recoiled instinctively, even with the emotional dampening of the mind center active. "That energy, it's overwhelming. I can't risk getting closer." From within the warehouse, he overheard a conversation. Jeffrey, a sharp-featured man, asked impatiently, "When will the maturation process be done? That fragment of the immortal king, it feels like it's sucking part of my soul every time I go in there." "It'll be soon, right? The teacher's been stuck in there for days." Another man replied, his tone cautious, "It should be soon. But isn't it funny? We're guarding this place so tightly with traps set all over the village and even here. Not even a mouse could sneak through." Sun Hyun's thoughts swirled. A fragment of the immortal king? That must be what they're guarding. But where else can I gather information? And where did that old man disappear to? Moments later, a sudden flash of magical energy pierced the rat's body, shattering the connection. The elder approached, his expression calm and his tone almost amused. "A simple mouse," he said, brushing his robes as he inspected the remains. Sun Hyun seethed from his safe distance. This old idiot. He noticed even a tiny spy. This is going to be more difficult than I thought. The protagonist's thoughts raced as he wondered, did they really figure me out? The old man stepped closer, inspecting the rat's lifeless body. "An undead?" he muttered, puzzled. "I don't sense black magic, but its body is brimming with dark mana. Could mana influence alone have turned this rat into an undead? There's only one place filled with such dark mana." He turned to the man nearby and asked sharply, "Jeffrey, you're in charge of the warehouse today, aren't you?" Sun Hyun, observing from afar, felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry, little rat. You've done well. I'll avenge your death, I promise. Watch over me from wherever you are." Some time later, Jeffrey stormed into the basement, his face twisted in rage. "A rat? All this fuss over a damn rodent? That stupid old man?" He seethed, pacing wildly. Then, glaring at Hans's undead form, he barked, "Hey, why the hell are you standing there like that? Follow my order and stand up straight." As Hans's undead body remained still, Jeffrey's irritation boiled over. He approached menacingly, raising a fist. "Didn't I tell you to stand up straight?" he spat. Grabbing Hans by the hair, he yanked him forward. "Aren't you the fool who dared to stand against me? Didn't you threaten to kill me if I touched your family? Go on, repeat it." His face twisted into a sadistic grin. "Oh, that's right. I ripped out your tongue." Jeffrey sneered, tossing Hans to the floor like a discarded doll. "You should be thankful I let you live, even after we hunted down every idiot in your pathetic village. And your wife, she's here too, isn't she? What about your children? Oh wait, maybe they're with other families now. The tables turn. Suddenly Hans's undead body sprang to life, lunging at Jeffrey and sinking his teeth into the man's neck. Jeffrey let out a horrified scream as he collapsed to the ground. What's happening to me? Stop, he stammered, his voice trembling with fear. Reaching out desperately, he began casting magic, but before he could finish, another undead figure, the reanimated body of Hans's wife, pounced on him from behind. Together, the two undead silenced Jeffrey forever. Sun Hyun, controlling Hans's body, felt a grim satisfaction. Their revenge has only just begun. A bold plan. Meanwhile, Sun Hyun switched control to Heinz and approached the village guards. My brother lives in this village, he shouted. The guards frowned. Your brother? He left not long ago. What makes you think we'll just let a stranger in? Heinz grinned. If that's the case, then bring me to the village elder. He'll recognize me. Moments later, Glokali arrived, his expression calm but inquisitive. What seems to be the matter? Heinz greeted him warmly, bowing slightly. Elder, it's a pleasure to meet you. I believe my twin brother Hans is somewhere here. Sun Hyun smirked inwardly. Having two avatars really comes in handy for moments like this. While Heinz kept Glokali distracted, Sun Hyun, through Hans's body, infiltrated the warehouse and approached the fragment of the immortal king. The fragment pulsed with a dark, otherworldly energy, resonating with the undead around it. Is it absorbing the energy from the undead? No, it's more like it's replenishing itself. This explains why the people here are so unnaturally strong. That warehouse I was stuck in before must have been a dumping ground. And yet these fools dare to act superior? They'll learn soon enough. Sun Hyun activated his abilities, drawing the fragment toward him. A powerful surge of energy echoed throughout the village, shaking the very ground. The elder's realization. Back at the gates, Heinz maintained his ruse. Twins are connected, he said with a sly smile. We always know where the other is. Glokali frowned, his suspicion growing. Hard to believe, he muttered. Suddenly his eyes widened in panic. He sensed a disturbance and shouted, something's wrong with the fragment. Kill this fool immediately. In a blur of movement, Glokali transformed into a monstrous, darkened form and hurtled toward the source of the disturbance, his face twisted with rage. The guards, startled by Heinz's sudden disappearance, raised their spears in confusion. Meanwhile, the protagonist reflected on the overwhelming surge of emotions emanating from the fragment. Such an irresistible flow of negative energy. Even with the mind center filtering the input, it's like a tidal wave. Could anyone endure this and remain sane? Suddenly, a deafening explosion of energy shook the area, and a system window materialized before him. System notification. Your essence meets the conditions. Information unlocked. Immortal magician Demolic. Rank increased due to the power of the fragment of the immortal king. Dark magic hidden in the fragment has assimilated with your essence. New skill acquired, demonic wisdom. This skill grants mastery of dark magic and an innate understanding of its mechanics. Sun Hyun marveled at the new power. Demonic wisdom. Just by observing dark magic, I can wield it as if I've known it forever. This changes everything. In the basement, a man stood near the remnants of Jeffrey's last stand, muttering to himself. That idiot couldn't even handle a zombie rat. Now I have to clean up this mess. Before he could proceed, the elder's booming voice rang out. Check the fragment immediately. And find Jeffrey. Grumbling, the man approached the cage containing the fragment. Why is it so quiet? He asked, leaning closer. Suddenly, a mass of undead surged from the shadows, clawing at him. Panicked, the man shouted, This is impossible. How can they? His words faltered as Heinz's voice cut through the chaos, calm and sarcastic. Lovely weather today, isn't it? The man's eyes widened in horror. How is he talking? The undead latched onto him, but he managed to release a small burst of magic, pushing them back momentarily. However, the cage shattered, releasing a flood of monsters into the basement. Heinz smirked, his voice dripping with mock politeness. Ignoring someone's greeting? How rude. Sun Hyun observed through Heinz's perspective, marveling at the newfound power demonic wisdom granted him. Dark magic feels as natural as breathing. This knowledge, it's like it was always there waiting for me to unlock it. Outside, a massive explosion rocked the village as the undead spilled into the streets. Heinz commanded them with unwavering authority. Don't let anyone escape. Kill them all. The confrontation with Glokali. A skeleton's body fell before Heinz and the elder, Glokali, emerged, his expression cold and furious. "You should have been an elite skeleton," he growled. "What did you do with the fragment of the immortal king?" Heinz greeted him with a grin. "Glokali, it's been too long. By the way, thanks to you I lost my heart. Fortunately, I found a new one in your warehouse." Glokali's face contorted with rage. "You dare to merge a fragment of the immortal king with such a pitiful body? You've gone too far." Raising his hand, he invoked a powerful spell. Finger of Death. A wave of dark energy surged forward, striking Heinz with enough force to sever his arm. Heinz glanced at his dismembered limb, more annoyed than pained. Attacking someone mid-conversation? Really, where are your manners? Silence. Glokali roared. "Do you have any idea how much effort and resources I've poured into this fragment? An entire year's worth of preparation, and you've ruined everything." Glokali's eyes blazed with fury. "I was so close," he growled, "to wielding a power greater than anything in existence. And now you've turned my masterpiece into this?" Heinz smirked, wrapped in the swirling energy of dark magic. "What's wrong, old man? Can't handle a rookie demolic? Dark thorn?" Glokali roared, sending tendrils of shadow magic spiraling toward Heinz. Heinz laughed. "Using high-ranking magic against a beginner? You must really be desperate." His voice turned cold as he countered effortlessly, "I'm the only one who can truly control the fragment, and you know it." Glokali sneered. "You may have survived the destruction of your body, but I'll dismantle it and use it for experiments. Let's see how you handle this destructive ectoplasm." Heinz scowled. "Stop reciting your skills like an amateur." His voice rose with disdain. "And just die already, Alfred." The elder froze for a moment. "Alfred?" His expression twisted into suspicion. "How do you know that name? Did you sneak into this village intentionally?" Before Heinz could reply, a surge of dark magic shot toward Glokali from behind. The elder reacted swiftly, deflecting the attack with ease. He narrowed his eyes. "You're adapting quickly to dark magic. Is it the fragment's doing? No matter. I have no time to waste." Raising his hand, Glokali activated another spell. Pact of Destruction. The battlefield dimmed as the souls of the fallen black magicians coalesced, swirling around Glokali like a maelstrom. A dark crown materialized on his head, amplifying his power. Heinz watched warily. "You're sacrificing the souls of your own allies for this? How fittingly vile of you." Glokali snarled, his voice thunderous. "With the full power of this fragment I would have crushed you. But no matter." Now, flame of souls soaked in darkness. A massive surge of fiery dark energy erupted toward Heinz. The final blow. Before the spell could reach its mark, a streak of magic pierced Glokali's chest. The elder stumbled, his expression frozen in disbelief. Heinz stood unimpressed. "Took you long enough to tire yourself out? Honestly, I almost fell asleep while you were chanting all those fancy spells." He added with a smirk, "By the way, thanks for plunging me headlong into dark magic. I think I've finally mastered it." Blood trickled from Glokali's lips as he collapsed to his knees. "How could I die like this? So senselessly?" Heinz watched him fall lifelessly to the ground. Raising his gaze to the sky, he muttered, "Alfred, I hope you saw all of this. Your revenge is complete. Rest in peace." Elsewhere. In a grand cathedral, Rista knelt before a massive statue, her hands clasped in prayer. The flickering light of candles illuminated her solemn face. A knock interrupted her meditation. Rising, she opened the door to find Martin, his face pale with urgency. "Are you finished praying?" he asked. "Yes," she replied calmly. "What's the matter?" Martin hesitated, then blurted, "The ghost of the immortal king's resurrection has been detected in the west." Rista's eyes widened slightly, though she maintained her composure. "The immortal king?" Martin nodded grimly. "I'll summon the council immediately." As he left, Rista turned back toward the statue, her expression hardening. "The one who brought terror to this continent hundreds of years ago. I won't let it happen again." On the battlefield, Heinz surveyed the wreckage, the remnants of the battle littered around him. "Devastation," he muttered. "Hundreds of undead destroyed." A grin crept across his face. "But losses can always be replenished. There's no need to mourn." He turned, the dark magic emanating from him pulsating with new strength. "After all, this is only the beginning." Heinz stood, surveying his work. The most wonderful thing about necromancy, he mused, was the ability to create soldiers from corpses. He glanced at his missing limb, irritated, and muttered to himself, "First things first, we'll need to take care of the hand." He had already walked a lot today, moving through the battlefield and observing the aftermath. His thoughts turned to his own body and the need to fix it before going any further. Looking around, Heinz's eyes fell upon a lone skeleton, its bones still fresh from the battle. Without hesitation, he tore off its arm, examining the form. "This will do." He attached the arm to his shoulder with practiced ease and placed his other hand over the spot, enveloping it with energy. "Super regeneration activated," he muttered under his breath. Clenching his fist, he tested the new limb. "Perfect," he said, pleased with the results. The regeneration took a moment, but soon the arm was securely attached, and Heinz's body was as whole as it could be in its current state. Where to start? He wondered. He stepped forward, hands extended as he focused his energy. The skeleton in front of him was about to become his first test. With a commanding tone, he spoke aloud, "You must become my subordinate." The voice of the evil wisdom, the fragment of the immortal king that had fused with his soul, whispered to him in the back of his mind. Its presence filled him with strength, guiding him toward his goal. "Return the remaining magical power to your body, cleanse it of the fragments of thoughts." But as he focused, something went wrong. The skeleton suddenly fell apart, crumbling into dust. "What?" Heinz raised his hands in confusion. "Didn't work?" A moment of silence followed as Heinz stood before the pile of bones, arms folded, contemplating. He muttered to himself as realization dawned on him. "I've been going about this wrong." After a few attempts, it clicked. He turned his gaze toward the village chief's body, still lying in the aftermath of the battle. A dark idea began to form. He pointed his hand toward the body and spoke slowly, "Should I turn you into an undead with a soul to extract information from you?" Grabbing the lifeless form of Makhem by the clothes, Heinz lifted him up for closer inspection. "What?" he exclaimed, his voice tinged with surprise. "The old man doesn't have a soul." Makhem's body had been stripped of any trace of life, except for the magical circle burned into his chest. Heinz examined the symbol and thought for a moment. So this is how they've been controlling things. Throwing Makhem's body aside, Heinz couldn't help but smirk at the oversight. "It's strange they didn't think of this little thing, considering the scale of their operations," he muttered. "But no matter. I can still use this." With renewed focus, Heinz concentrated energy into his hand. "If the soul is gone, I'll have to make do with what's left." He directed the energy straight into Makhem's body, deciding that he would turn the old man into something more useful. A high-level undead with consciousness and combat skills. Heinz's magic spiraled through the corpse, desecrating the remnants of its magical power and cleansing it of any remaining fragment of thought. A few moments later, the body twitched and Makhem rose to his feet, now an obedient death mage. The undead mage stood before Heinz, waiting for orders. His voice was hollow but clear. "I await your command." Heinz looked at him with curiosity. "You're speaking." "I didn't even expect that result," he muttered, impressed. He turned to Makhem, his expression cold. "Your name is Makhem. From now on you will obey me." Without hesitation, Heinz slammed his hand against the undead mage's skull. Makhem flinched but immediately responded with desperation. I will obey." Heinz smirked, rubbing the bruise on Makhem's head. "Even if he lost his memories, his sins remain. I'll enjoy this." Turning his attention to Makhem's cane, Heinz casually remarked, "It looks pretty good." Makhem's bones trembled, his fear palpable. His new existence as a death mage was not one of autonomy, it was one of fear and servitude. The power of the immortal king's fragment coursed through Heinz, and with it, the ability to control life, death, and everything in between. Heinz's grin widened. "You're going to be a useful tool?" As the protagonist stood, looking over the gold he had gathered, his thoughts shifted to the mountain of corpses he had left behind. Among the undead, there was one particularly young zombie, a grim reminder of the recent battle. This young zombie, who killed Jeffy along with him, he thought. He placed his hand on the zombie's head in a strangely respectful gesture. Well, he should rest in peace with his family. With a flick of his wrist, he directed fire at the building nearby, setting it ablaze. The crackling of flames in the distance was the only sound that could be heard as the protagonist briefly considered the devastation he had wrought. No turning back now. Back in his hideout, the protagonist sat comfortably at a table, his belly full after a satisfying meal. He leaned back, smiling contentedly. "Ha, I ate too much," he said to himself, his voice light. "God, that was delicious." He glanced at his phone, curiosity piquing. "What's the gold rate today?" he muttered aloud, tapping the screen. The village had been full of magicians, and given their affinity for treasure and arcane wealth, there was bound to be a lot of gold left behind. Just think, these people had accumulated a fortune. He began considering what he might do with the loot. Maybe I should take a closer look at what's left. With a deliberate motion he reached out, muttering, "Summon Hans." In an instant his avatar appeared before him, and an ominous aura filled the room. The feeling was intense, suffocating, his presence too strong for the quiet of the space. The protagonist's eyes widened in panic as he recoiled, covering his face. "Cancel the summoning," he shouted in fear. As quickly as the avatar had appeared, it vanished. He gasped for breath, his heart racing. "I thought I was going to die," he muttered to himself. "What should I do now?" He scratched the back of his head in frustration, trying to regain his composure. "I need to summon Hans, but maybe I should improve my unique skill first." The protagonist's thoughts turned inward, and he focused on accessing the Karma Shop, a place where he could enhance his abilities. Moments later, a system window appeared in front of him. He marveled at the results. "I earned more than I expected," he mused. The last time he had just over 400,000 karma. Now the amount had grown. He selected the item to improve his unique skill and spent a hefty 300,000 karma. A message popped up on the screen stating that his skill had improved. The number of avatars you can own has increased. His mental strength exceeded the norm, and as the information sunk in, he clenched his fist, enveloped in a surge of energy. Serenity. This skill would protect him from external stimuli and mental attacks. A welcome upgrade for the challenges ahead. Later he began filling a paper bag with gold, thinking about the potential. With my normal state of health, Hans can benefit from serenity, unlike the center of the mind. It was incredible how he always seemed to pick the right skills when needed. When the bag was full of gold he smiled with satisfaction. Great. Time to sell the gold. He quickly moved the filled bags as well as a backpack full of gold to the table in front of the committee. As he laid the bags out, the workers couldn't hide their astonishment. They gasped, shielding their eyes from the precious glow radiating from the gold. The protagonist nodded, maintaining his calm demeanor. "Please deposit all the funds into my account." He then turned and walked outside, leaving the employees to complete their task. They bowed in gratitude, thanking him for his trust. Sung Hyun offered a smile in return, wishing them well. As he walked away, he glanced at his shadow on the ground, remembering how Hans had hidden it with dark magic just in case. "Maybe I was worried for nothing," he mused. The shadow was well concealed, even masked to avoid detection. Just as he was about to leave the area, an explosion echoed from behind him. The building rocked, debris flying through the air. Wolf stood amidst the destruction, his grin wide as he surveyed the damage. "Looks like we hit the jackpot," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Holding a bag of gold in his hand, the protagonist, Sung Hyun, grinned, looking at the treasure he had gathered. Who would have thought there'd be so much gold in such a remote place? He mused, clearly pleased with the haul. His grin was wide, but it was quickly interrupted as a bandit beside him urged, "Stop chatting, it's time for us to run." Without wasting time they made their way forward, running swiftly through the streets. "I know," Wolf shouted, his confidence undeterred as they sprinted. Ahead of them they spotted Sung Hyun, who looked at them in fear and shouted, "Villains! Someone needs to report them. These criminals using their awakened powers for evil, and the ones who protect citizens from them are..." His words were cut off as a powerful blow struck his cheek. Wolf, dealing the blow, shouted, "Shut up." His voice was a harsh command, shutting down Sung Hyun's words before they could gain any traction. The protagonist touched his bruised cheek and thought to himself, "The guards will probably track them down. I can't do anything." Meanwhile, Wolf ran confidently forward, saying, "Great. Everything is going according to plan." The bandit hanging from his back added, "We've got plenty of time. The guards will be here in about 3 minutes. We just need to reach the portal." "Is she here?" As they neared their destination they saw something that made them stop in their tracks, a girl lying unconscious on the ground. The wolf stopped and shouted, "Portal? What happened to her? She needs to wake up." His voice was laced with urgency. The bandit, looking around nervously, turned to the wolf and said, "Look over there." His voice trembled as he pointed, and the wolf looked to see a figure standing in front of them, masked and glowing ominously in the distance. "Hans?" the wolf muttered, trying to make sense of the situation. He couldn't help but ask, "Who's that?" "The guards?" The bandit, shaking his head, whispered, "That idiot isn't one of them." As Hans moved closer, he reached up to remove his mask. Sung Hyun won't be able to do anything, Hans thought, but he knew that his avatar, was a different matter entirely. The bandits looked on in fear, raising their hands in surrender. Time passed, and soon the guards of the South Korean Returned Association arrived at the scene, their boots pounding the ground as they ran. The lead guard shouted confidently, "Here?" He looked back at his colleagues, urging them forward. "Are we going to miss him again?" When they arrived, they froze in surprise. "What happened here?" the guard asked. He surveyed the area where the bandits lay defeated on the ground. The wolf, still dazed, had lost his mask in the scuffle. The lead guard assumed that someone had dealt with the villains but that they couldn't have gotten far. He turned to his colleagues, gesturing around the area. "Search the surroundings carefully." Meanwhile, Hans, like a shadow, moved swiftly through the area. He flew past the guards, heading straight toward Sung Hyun. As they reunited, Sung Hyun couldn't help but smile. "I see you've warmed up well," he remarked, pleased with the success of their plan. The tension hung in the air as the scene shifted to what would come next, the consequences of their actions and the looming threat of the guards' arrival. Heinz strolled around the parking lot with his hands in his pockets, feeling a sense of satisfaction as he reflected on how relieving stress like this could sometimes be a good idea. His mind was clear for the moment, and the mundane surroundings seemed to offer a rare calm. Meanwhile, Hans, his second avatar who possessed the unique skill Vitality, stood at the entrance to a city on the east side. With a smile on his face, he shielded his eyes from the sun as he looked out at the unfamiliar skyline. "I finally made it here," he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. He remembered Malcolm's words about this city, and after seeing it for himself, he concluded that the old man hadn't lied after all. Stepping into the city, Hans mused aloud, "This is my debut in another world." But even as he admired the bustling surroundings, something didn't feel right. "Although there's still everything ahead," he added, scanning the area. However, as he walked deeper into the city, he realized something. Why was the city so empty? It seemed that the locals weren't paying much attention to newcomers. People went about their business as if strangers were a normal occurrence, not even sparing Hans a glance. Just then, in a nearby alley, a robber turned to his companion Diana and exclaimed, "Was this a joke?" He pointed an accusing finger at her, his expression dark. "I warned you." Diana, trembling, folded her hands in a prayer pose and apologized, pleading for a little more time. The robber's tone grew harsher. "I want 2 silver coins from both of you," he demanded. "And you have 3 days. No money? Then there's no other choice." Hans, who had been casually observing the scene from the corner of his eye, thought to himself, local thugs, and a young girl being manipulated. How cliché. He was about to continue walking, uninterested in getting involved, but fate had other plans. As Diana turned and tried to flee from the robbers, she collided with Hans. She stumbled back, immediately lowering her head in apology. "Sorry," she muttered, not knowing who he was. "Let's talk," Hans said, his tone calm as he sized her up. "How well do you know this city?" It was clear to him that he would need a guide. "Who are you, uncle?" she asked, surprised by the stranger's sudden question. Hans grinned, holding up 2 silver coins in his hand. "I'm a potential employer," he said, his smile widening. "Maybe we can discuss the terms?" Diana's eyes widened as she stared at the silver coins, the promise of money catching her attention. She quickly agreed, and the two of them made their way through the streets toward an inn. When they arrived, Diana pointed to the building. "This inn is one of the best places you'll find here," she said, clearly proud of her choice. "What do you think?" Hans, now understanding a bit more about her situation, nodded thoughtfully. He could tell from the way she spoke that life hadn't been easy for her. Diana had barely been making ends meet, struggling to care for her sick brother after the loss of her parents. She also mentioned how she couldn't pay the local tax. In response, Hans handed her a silver coin, and Diana's eyes sparkled with gratitude. "Okay," Hans said with a smile. "You'll come to me tomorrow as soon as you wake up. We can discuss your pay then." Diana agreed quickly, and with that she became his guide, earning 2 silver coins a day. That night, Hans lay down on the bed at the inn, his hands tucked under his head as he made himself comfortable. "Well," he thought, "I'll pretend I'm doing a good deed even if she just wants to rob me." He chuckled to himself and settled in for the night, his thoughts drifting off as he prepared for whatever the next day might bring. Heinz sat up in bed, scratching his head in frustration. The bed was terribly uncomfortable, and despite his best efforts, he couldn't seem to fall asleep. He tossed and turned for a while, but then a sudden sneeze from outside caught his attention. Curiosity piqued, he got up and walked to the window, pressing his hand to the glass. His eyes widened in surprise as he spotted Diana sitting on the ground outside, leaning her back against a box. "Hey, is that her?" he muttered to himself. Diana looked up at him, her eyes widening, and then smiled, waving in greeting. "Hello," she called up to him. Heinz was indignant. "What are you doing there?" he shouted down, clearly irritated. "Why are you waiting for me?" After a moment they were sitting together at the table eating breakfast. Heinz frowned as he took a bite, his frustration still simmering. "You shouldn't do that again," he said, trying to sound stern. "Next time, wait until closer to lunch." Diana, chewing a piece of food, nodded absent-mindedly. "Yes, uncle," she said. Heinz shot her a glare. "I've already told you not to call me that," he replied, annoyance creeping into his voice. She looked at him, then glanced at the piece of bread on his plate. "Are you full?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," Heinz replied. "You can take it if you're hungry." With a smile, Diana took the bread and slipped it into her bag. "Thank you," she said, grateful. The town they were in was called Ozantu, a small village located on the western edge of the Kingdom of Talia. As Heinz and Diana walked through the streets, Heinz noticed something odd. He ran his hand along a drawing on a wall, which reminded him of ordinary medieval towns, but something about the symbol that was repeated throughout the town felt off. "This symbol? It's strange," he murmured, his curiosity growing. Heinz examined it more closely and said, "It looks like paint, but something's not right." Diana leaned in to take a closer look, and her face darkened. "It's blood," she replied, her tone serious. Heinz blinked, not believing it at first. He sniffed the symbol and gave a skeptical look. "Is that true?" he asked. Diana, not missing a beat, quipped, "Didn't you eat venison soup yesterday?" Heinz turned to her in surprise, blinking in disbelief. "How did you know?" he asked. With a smile, Diana pointed to her nose and said, "I have a very good sense of smell." Heinz found it fascinating. A good sense of smell? He thought. Is that her special skill? They continued walking through the streets, Heinz still pondering the implications of her statement. He asked, "What does the symbol mean?" Diana hesitated for a moment, then answered, "It's the emblem of the Varkalak Guild, which controls this place." But before she could finish, she froze, her face paling in fear. She began to slowly back away, bumping into Heinz. "What's wrong?" Heinz asked, alarmed by her sudden change in demeanor. Diana's eyes darted around nervously. "That smell," she said, her voice tight. Heinz furrowed his brow. "What smell?" he asked, not sure what she was talking about. Diana inhaled deeply, her eyes closed as she focused on the scent. Then, with a sense of urgency, she turned around, her fists clenched. "Freshly baked bread," she exclaimed. "I have to try it?" Heinz, confused but amused, asked, "Didn't you just eat a minute ago?" Diana pointed ahead, her face lighting up with anticipation. "I'm hungry again," she said, clearly excited by the smell. They followed the scent down an alley which led them to a door. When they peeked inside, Heinz's stomach dropped. Behind the door was a corpse, its lifeless body sprawled on the ground. The smell of bread was still in the air, but the sight of the body made it clear that something sinister was at play. A few days later, Heinz stood against a wall, arms folded, waiting impatiently. "She's never been late before," he muttered. "Something must be wrong." Just then, a bandit approached him, a smirk on his face. "Hey buddy," the bandit called out, drawing Heinz's attention. Heinz looked at the bandit in surprise, unsure of what to make of the situation. The bandit, arms folded and wearing a smug expression, said, "We should talk." Heinz felt a moment of frustration, thinking to himself, has it really come to this? The next instant, he handed the bandits a handful of silver coins, offering them a smile. "Take this," he said, trying to remain calm. "There aren't many, but I hope they help maintain some sense of public order." The bandits exchanged looks, then one of them picked up a silver coin, a grin spreading across his face. "Seems we've quickly found a common language," he remarked, clearly amused. Heinz thought to himself, I brought money just for this kind of situation. But then, his eyes narrowed as he noticed something. The bandit had a symbol on his neck, one that looked strikingly similar to the emblem Heinz had seen on the walls of the city earlier. His thoughts turned grim. Diana had warned me to avoid the alleys. We need to leave this place as soon as possible. Heinz couldn't help but wonder just how terrified the girl must have been, given how deeply afraid she'd seemed of the thugs. The bandits moved away, but one of them turned to the other and asked, "Why did you grab this brat?" His comrade responded dismissively, "How should I know, idiot? We're just following orders." The word struck Heinz like a blow. "Brat?" he thought. "Don't tell me those two bastards grabbed Yen?" Without thinking, he shouted after them, "Wait a minute." The bandits turned around in surprise, eyeing him curiously. Heinz clenched his fist. Damn it, timing is everything in situations like these. If things get dangerous, I can just cancel the call. He forced a smile, trying to stay calm. "There's something I wanted to know." At that moment, Diana's voice suddenly called out to him, and he turned around in shock. "Huh? Diana?" The bandit, now flexing his fist with an irritated expression, remarked, "So, what's your friend interested in?" Heinz gave an awkward smile, trying to keep the conversation light. "Is the silver I gave enough?" A little while later, one of the bandits returned with a bag in his hands. "They took everything," he said nonchalantly, tossing the bag aside before turning toward Heinz. The bandit's expression hardened. "And where's the rest of it? You were supposed to meet us long ago." Heinz shot him a glare. "Did you even know how much I gave you?" In that moment, Diana's face fell and tears began to form in her eyes. "My little brother is missing," she sobbed, her voice trembling. "He was just starting to get better, he could eat again, but now I can't find him anywhere." Heinz's mind raced as he recalled the conversation he'd overheard between the bandits. Could they be talking about Diana's brother? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Could it be Varkalak? Diana looked up at him, her face stricken with terror. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in despair. Heinz frowned and asked gently, "What do you mean?" Tears streamed down Diana's cheeks. "They really took him," she choked out. "Aaron will die if they hurt him." Heinz's heart sank as he watched her crumble in front of him, the weight of her words sinking in. He knelt down beside her, trying to comfort her the best he could. "Don't worry so much," he said softly. "If they want a ransom, I'll pay it. You won't be alone in this." But Diana, her voice barely above a whisper, whispered in disbelief, "They really took him. Aaron will die." Heinz's heart pounded in his chest as Diana's words hit him like a cold shock. "Blood," she had said. He repeated the word in disbelief. "Why blood?" he asked, struggling to understand. Diana, still shaking with fear, managed to sit up. "This city," she whispered, her voice trembling, "is a warehouse for live blood bags. For vampires." Heinz's mind reeled as the weight of her words sank in. Before he could process it further, a voice from above cut through the tension. A vampire stood on the roof, his figure silhouetted against the setting sun. "The smell of dark mana is strong," he said with a low, cruel smirk. "Did they kill each other over the fragment of the immortal king? How unfortunate. I wanted to destroy it once it fully matured." The vampire folded his arms, his smile widening as he continued. "I don't know who stole it, but I know exactly where it's going. So, finding the thief won't be difficult." Heinz, still processing the bizarre situation, looked at Diana, his expression confused. "A vampire?" Tears streaming down her face, Diana nodded. "Yes, vampires. The Varkalaks and all the other organizations in this city, they're all run by vampires. Even if you escape the city, none of us will survive. They're all connected and they'll hunt us down." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "We've been trying our best to hold on, but we're just getting picked off one by one. In the end, I know what will happen to us." Heinz reached out, gently grabbing her face and forcing her to meet his gaze. "Listen to me," he said, his voice firm. "If what you're saying is true, we don't have much time. Do you know where they've taken your brother?" Diana hesitated, looking down at the ground. She looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes, and then whispered, "I don't know. But, if you try to help me, it will be dangerous. You won't survive either." Heinz smiled, though the weight of the situation hung heavily in the air. "Don't worry about that," he said confidently. "I know how to fight back against these scoundrels. We'll make it through this." In his mind, the mission to save the girl, and to get to the bottom of the sinister operations in the city, had just begun. Sometime later, in a dimly lit tavern, a group of bandits sat around a table, laughing and playing cards. One of them tossed silver coins onto the table, calling, "All in." His companion looked at him with a grin. "Where did a debtor like you get such a big pile of money?" The first bandit leaned back and smirked. "I robbed some idiot this morning. Made a nice profit." At that moment, the tavern doors flew open with a loud crash. The bandits turned in surprise, just in time to see Heinz stride into the room, his expression determined. One of the bandits stood up with a sneer. "What's this then?" he said, striding toward Heinz. "Who's this idiot?" His comrade snickered. "Is he some new fool who thinks he can challenge us?" The bandit raised his hand to stop his friend, looking Heinz up and down before saying, "So, you're the idiot we robbed. Came to give us more money, did you?" Heinz didn't flinch. He held his ground, his eyes steely with resolve. Meanwhile, near the entrance of the tavern against the wall with the vampire symbol, blood dripped slowly from a wound. A guard lay slumped, his broken body leaning against the wall. The bandit sneered at the scene. "What happened to the guards?" he asked. "Did you give him a coin or something?" Heinz's expression darkened as he met the bandit's gaze. "I won't ask again," he said quietly but with a deadly edge in his voice. "Where did you take the child?" The bandit's face twisted in disbelief. "What?" he spat, raising his finger toward Heinz. "Are you out of your mind? Do you know who you're dealing with?" In the blink of an eye, Heinz drew a knife from his belt and drove it straight into the bandit's throat. The man gasped, his eyes wide with shock as the blood began to spill. "I know exactly who you are," Heinz said coldly, watching the life drain from the bandit. "You're scum. You prey on families to satisfy your own selfish desires." As the bandit crumpled to the floor, the others in the tavern fell silent, eyes wide with fear. Heinz stood over the fallen body, his knife gleaming in the dim light, ready to face whatever came next. The mission was far from over. Heinz stood in the midst of the fallen bandits, his breathing heavy as the weight of the fight settled in. His knife was lodged deep into his shoulder, but he didn't flinch. Blood seeped from the wound, but he didn't have time to focus on it. There were still too many enemies around. "Why are there so many?" he muttered to himself. He had lost count of how many bandits he'd taken down in the chaos. Each one had been dispatched swiftly, his skills in combat and the magical tools he'd brought with him giving him a significant edge. But now more were coming down the stairs. He wrenched the knife out of his shoulder with a grimace, his gaze scanning the room. A couple of new bandits appeared at the top of the stairs, looking down at the carnage below. One of them shouted, "What's all the commotion about? Who the hell is this guy?" Heinz paused for a moment, annoyed at his own carelessness. Damn it, he thought. His mouth had gotten him into trouble again. This wasn't the time for reckless talk. There were more screams from the building, growing louder as the fight escalated. The bandits kept coming one after another. 6, 7, 8. It felt endless. Eventually, Heinz stood alone in the middle of the fallen bodies, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his forehead. His shoulder throbbed where the knife had struck, but he had no time to think about it now. His focus was on the bandit still alive, groaning beneath him. He stepped over to the bandit, placing his foot firmly on his head. "Hey big guy," he said with a sneer, "where's the boy you captured today?" The bandit, still dazed and groaning in pain, glared up at him. "You think I'm just gonna tell you everything?" he snarled. "You're an outsider, aren't you? You don't even know who's behind this. You're gonna regret this." Heinz's expression darkened, his eyes cold as steel. "I don't care who's behind this," he said, his voice low but steady. "I'll find the boy and I'll make sure your little game ends here." The bandit struggled under Heinz's foot, but Heinz wasn't about to give him any leeway. He leaned in closer, whispering, "Tell me where he is and I'll make it quick. Otherwise, we'll see how long you can last." The bandit growled through gritted teeth, but Heinz could see the fear in his eyes. Despite his bravado, the man was terrified. I don't know where they took him," the bandit spat, "but the leader, he's the one with all the answers. He's got a place near the old mill. Go there if you want to find the kid." Heinz's eyes narrowed. This was the break he needed. The mill. Got it? He stepped off the bandit's head and turned, heading for the door. As he did, he thought to himself, this isn't over yet. They've taken too much from this town and I'm going to put an end to it. He left the tavern, the weight of the mission heavy on his shoulders. There was no turning back now. After some time, Heinz opened the door to the room. Seeing the boy sitting on the floor, he asked, "Is this Aaron?" Trembling with fear, Aaron held his head and begged for mercy. The avatar knelt down, extended a hand toward him and reassured him, "Don't be afraid." Aaron's sister had pleaded for his rescue. Confused, Aaron asked, "Do you know my sister?" At that moment, a vampire in bat form flew into the scene. Heinz turned to Aaron, confirming, "It's true. I'll explain everything once we're out of here. But first we need to leave." The vampire landed on the window and shifted into his human form. Glaring at Heinz, he sneered, "Who are you? How dare you touch my food in my restaurant?" Heinz froze, feeling a sinister presence behind him. The vampire taunted him, saying, "Are you from an oath of disobedience?" Taking Aaron by the shoulder, Heinz thought, "A vampire." The vampire continued, "Or perhaps you're this boy's brother. Do you know what happens to those who defy us?" Smirking, the avatar replied, "Me? Just an outsider, robbed by your rabble." Shielding Aaron, he added, "It's pure coincidence I helped this boy. The vampire extended a hand and scoffed, "Really? How dull. I prefer my meals lively. Both of you will die here." As the vampire fired a magical projectile that shattered the surroundings, Heinz shielded Aaron with his body, yelling, "Run!" The avatar, now lying on the ground amidst spilled alcohol, gasped heavily. He sat up, noticing the smell of liquor, and muttered, "Alcohol? Is that a barrel?" He patted Aaron's head, asking, "Are you okay? This is it, you need to hurry and get outside." Just then the vampire landed nearby, sneering, "Dodged? You're faster than I expected. A good warm-up before dinner." The vampire lunged with claws extended, but the avatar shoved Aaron toward the door, shouting, "Run and don't look back." Wielding his sword, he blocked the attack but noticed the vampire's claws growing longer. They pierced his body as the vampire mockingly praised his regeneration abilities. Heinz clenched his teeth, realizing the power gap was immense. The vampire, licking his lips, remarked, "Unexpected, but you'll make a fine delicacy." Despite the pain, Heinz thought, "If I hesitate, I'll die." He swung his hand, but the vampire severed it effortlessly, laughing, "Oh dear. I'll carve you up before I feast." Lifting Heinz into the air on his claws, the vampire declared, "This is where your resistance ends." As he leaned toward Heinz's neck, Heinz thought, "If strength isn't enough, then we'll both die." From his mouth, he unleashed a hidden fire spell, engulfing the area in flames. Shocked, the vampire shouted, "What is this? A fire magic tool? You were hiding this." Thrown to the ground, Heinz noticed the alcohol spilling across the floor. A plan formed in his mind. The vampire screamed in terror, "You're insane. Do you want to burn us both alive?" The vampire attacked, slashing Heinz's body. Laughing maniacally, he jeered, "Fragile flesh." But Heinz headbutted him with full force, sending him flying. "You said it yourself. I have a strong body and good regeneration. Tough enough for you?" he growled. The vampire screamed, "No. Stop." But Heinz advanced, and the next moment an explosion consumed the building. Amidst the flames, Heinz lay on the floor, murmuring, "Impressive. I survived. Being strong has its challenges." A notification appeared before him. "Mission complete. Help the unlucky girl." Outside the burning building, Diana clung to her brother, staring at the inferno. "Uncle," she cried. Meanwhile, a system window announced, "Avatar Heinz has died. The avatar will respawn in 7 days." Diana stood there, exhausted from her work, wiping the sweat from her brow as she watched the man walk away. She had been cleaning his shoes for what felt like hours, and now that the job was finished, she could finally take a moment to catch her breath. The money left on the table was a small consolation, but it would be enough to help with the next day's bills. Her thoughts drifted to the events that had unfolded not long ago. The building that had once been the scene of chaos was now nothing but a smoldering wreck. She had heard that the avatar Heinz had been consumed by the flames, leaving her to wonder about the fate of the man who had helped her and her brother. The world around her flickered, and a new, familiar figure stood before her. It was Heinz, alive, standing in the middle of the street as if nothing had happened. His body was covered in bandages, but the intense aura he exuded made it clear he had come back, somehow. Diana stared at him, mouth agape. Her heart skipped a beat. "Uncle?" Heinz's eyes softened, and he smiled faintly despite the pain he was clearly in. "I told you I'd be back," he said, his voice hoarse. It was then that the system window appeared in front of him, announcing that Avatar Heinz had been reborn after 7 days. His rebirth had been completed, and with it came a sense of purpose, a new mission to carry out. The flames from the explosion, the chaos, the danger, they were all behind him now. But Heinz knew this was just the beginning. Whatever had happened, whatever lay ahead, he was ready. And this time he wouldn't fail. Diana slowly approached him, her eyes filled with disbelief and relief. "You're really here? You're alive?" Heinz nodded, offering her a reassuring smile. "I told you I'd keep my promise." He extended his hand, a gesture of both gratitude and solidarity. "Let's move forward together." And with that, they began to walk side by side, ready to face whatever challenge. After some time, Heinz sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the system window deep in thought. It displayed that the interdimensional transfer would take 10 days to complete. "Longer than I expected," he muttered, "but that's fine." Suddenly the wall burst apart and Virik stormed in, grabbing Heinz by the neck. He slammed him against the wall and growled, "This was your doing, wasn't it? The tracks from the forest lead straight here." Heinz, gasping for air, thought, vampires. Have they figured it out already? Virik sneered. The outsider was under the jurisdiction of my slain kin? He accused. Despite his struggle, Heinz couldn't muster the strength to fight back. What a monster, he thought, his teeth clenched in frustration. Leaning closer, Virik sniffed the air around Heinz's neck. I don't sense the aura of dark magic or the blood of my king, he mused aloud. Heinz, barely able to speak, croaked, What are you talking about? I don't understand. I was just sleeping. Virik grinned menacingly. Don't understand, huh? Let's see about that. Pulling Heinz closer, he sank his fangs into his neck. I'll ask again, slowly this time. Lies won't work. Heinz convulsed in pain, thinking this is insane. Why is this happening to me again? The system window flashed a notification. Entity appearance has changed, vampire. Virik released him, stepping back as another message appeared. Special skill acquired, legacy of lesser blood. Heinz's super regeneration had been replaced with regeneration. Still radiating an overwhelming aura, Virik asked, So, are you truly uninvolved in the vow of disobedience? Heinz felt the oppressive authority of the higher vampire, his blood screaming for submission. Swallowing hard, he replied, No, Lord Virik. I'm just a simple traveler. Despite the instinct to obey, Heinz knew his center of the mind ability blocked the compulsion. Virik turned away, muttering, Was I mistaken? Then he commanded, Follow me. We have important matters to attend to. Heinz smiled faintly. Fine. I'll go, and gather some intel while I'm at it. They soon arrived at the Azanta branch of the Vargalak clan. Inside, vampires greeted Virik with respect, though their eyes narrowed at Heinz. One sneered, What is this? New blood? A female vampire covered her mouth, disdainful. What were you thinking, bringing scum like this? Before Heinz could react, Rosalicia appeared, a glass of red liquid in hand. Beaming, she grabbed his arm. Hello, little blood. Long time no see, she exclaimed. Her cheerful demeanor caught Heinz off guard. Who is this drunkard? He thought. She introduced herself with a bright smile. I'm Rosalicia. And you? He hesitated but answered, Heinz? Rosalicia handed him the glass. Don't be rude. We're both lesser bloods, aren't we? Here, freshly squeezed blood. Drink up. Heinz stared at the glass, debating. If I drink, I might avoid suspicion. Taking a small sip, he felt a surge of thirst, even through his mental filter. Alarmed, he thought, drinking this is dangerous. Blocking the taste and smell, he downed the rest in one gulp. Delicious, he said flatly. Rosalicia ran her finger along his cheek with a playful grin. I like you. If you were human, I'd drain you dry, she teased. He laughed awkwardly. You called me lesser blood? What does that mean? Rosalicia tilted her head, placing a finger on her chin. Huh. You don't know about vampire ranks? She asked incredulously. Lesser bloods are like knights to humans. Pure bloods, though, they're the aristocracy. For example, Lord Virik, Rosalicia explained. The clan leaders are known as the true blood. And above them is the sacred blood. She paused before adding, Well, it's like a god. The avatar raised an eyebrow. A god? He asked. She nodded. Our prophet. The one we must obey without question. At that moment, Virik, standing on the second floor, tapped his spoon against his glass to draw attention. It seems everyone is here, he announced. Let's get down to business. The room quieted as Virik continued. The fragments of the immortal king have disappeared. From across the room, Perita, a pure-blood vampire, casually adjusted a strand of her hair, observing the proceedings. Virik elaborated, We've determined that the fragments were last transported to the city. But at some point, they vanished without a trace. Teopal, another pure-blood, folded his arms and listened as Virik suggested. It's possible they've already been brought into the city. Heinz glanced up, his curiosity piqued. The fragments of the immortal king? He asked. Rosalicia sighed, giving him a knowing look. Don't you know? Dark mages from a certain village were cultivating the fragments of the immortal king. Heinz furrowed his brow. And the oath of defiance? Where are they in all this? Virik addressed the group. From today onward, each of you will thoroughly investigate your assigned areas. Report anything suspicious immediately. Later, as Rosalicia shielded herself from the sun with an umbrella, she grumbled, Walking around during the day ruins my skin. Heinz, standing beside her and adjusting the hood of his cloak, remarked, Sunlight weakens us. It's no surprise. Both their faces glistened with sweat. Rosalicia continued, Even Lady Perita, a pure blood, is out searching. We can't just sit around doing nothing. She sighed. Still, it's surprising the fragments vanished. Moving them has always been a hassle. Heinz turned to her, intrigued. You mean, you've had the fragments of the immortal king? She nodded casually. The black magicians once cultivated them. We thought we could combine them with ours? Heinz clenched his fists, his thoughts racing. What a break. He looked at her intently and grabbed her shoulders. Where are they? Do you know the location of the fragments? Rosalicia laughed. Me? How would someone like me know? A voice cut in from nearby. I think I might know, Diana said between bites of food. Heinz turned to her in shock. What? The fragments of the immortal king? You know where they are? Diana nodded hesitantly. I think so. But it's been a long time, she said, pausing to chew. About a year ago, I was responsible for keeping the tomb clean. Every Friday, members of the Vargalak Guild would visit the stone chamber inside. But every time there was a foul smell in there. Heinz's mind raced. I should investigate this. Aaron, sitting nearby, sighed in realization. So that's why you always told me to stay away from the tomb. Heinz stood from the table, nodding firmly. Thank you for the valuable information, Diana. I'll investigate this myself. It would be better for them to keep a low profile. Diana said, grabbing his hand and turning to him, that he seemed to smell different now. Could he tell her the reason? Sung Hyun said, showing his fangs, that her nose was not deceiving her, but it just happened that. What? It would not affect her, so she should not worry. Diana looked at him in shock. She said, gloomily holding his hand and turning to him, that if he got sick. Diana screamed, exposing her neck, that it was okay with her so he could drink some of her blood. She said, stretching out her hand to him in fear that she just wouldn't drink too much blood. The protagonist stared at her in complete shock. He screamed, hitting her on the head, that she should calm down. Sung Hyun said, angry that he already had enough, so she better answer where that place was. A while later, cries of pain echoed through the cemetery. Stand still, Tiapol commanded coldly, his voice full of menace. Do you really want to die? His lips curled into a cruel smile. I'll give you one chance, take your best shot at me. Afterward, I'll gently send you back home. The man, trembling with fear but clutching his weapon tightly, let out a defiant scream and charged at the vampire. Tiapol, unfazed, smirked and activated his ability. How cruel of me, he said mockingly as blood-red threads materialized and bound the man's body. The man struggled, wide-eyed, and pleaded, you don't need to do this. But as his blood was drained, his cries turned to screams. Stop. Please stop. Tiapol sighed, sounding almost bored. This is so dull. He glanced at a nearby servant and barked, clean up this trash and bring me someone stronger for the next sacrifice. Yes, master, the servant replied politely, cradling the man's lifeless remains. Suddenly he paused, staring at the ground in shock. Wait, what is that? Without warning, a swarm of skeletons attacked the servant, tearing him apart. Tiapol roared in fury. How did these filthy corpses get here? His anger only grew as more skeletons surged forward. Servants, destroy these wretched creatures at once. A shadowy figure darted through the chaos, striking down enemies with precision. Who are you? Tiapol demanded, glaring at the figure. Are you a necromancer from the Oath of Defiance? How do you know about this place? The shadow revealed itself as Sung Hyun, controlling Hansa's body, wielding dark magic with ease. Tiapol's annoyance deepened. You're not going to talk willingly, are you? He sneered. Fine. I'll just rip your head off and ask my questions later. He unleashed a barrage of blood-based attacks, tearing through the skeleton army. Sung Hyun smirked, manipulating the skeleton remnants into makeshift weapons with his magic. So, you'll just leave my head? He muttered, amused. Let's see how that plan works out for you. Tiapol gritted his teeth. The spell is too fast. I can't dodge it. At that moment, Sung Hyun intercepted one of Tiapol's attacks. Tiapol froze, startled. Reinforcements? He asked, his voice laced with surprise. Then, with a sinister grin, he added, You've arrived just in time. Have you already reported the ambush here? Heinz too shouted back, I've already done that. Lord Viric's followers are gathered outside. I came here first to help you. Tiapol's expression twisted with anger. Great news, he snarled sarcastically. Then you'd better make yourself useful. This Demolic is strong enough to hold us off. We need to buy time for reinforcements. Suddenly, the younger vampire, representing the protagonist, sank his fangs into Tiapol's neck. Tiapol whipped around, shocked. What blood? He shouted. Have you gone insane, you fool? The protagonist, through Heinz, cast dark magic. Dark magic. Tiapol gasped, wide-eyed. You've conspired against me? How could this happen? His voice turned desperate. Stop this madness immediately. Tiapol screamed in horror as his strength faded. How could you drink the blood of your own kind? It's a grave sin. It clouds your mind, corrupts your soul. His voice faltered as he collapsed to the ground. This can't happen. Heinz too wiped blood from his lips and smirked. Clouds the mind, huh? Well, it seems to be working just fine for me. A system window materialized, displaying skill acquired, blood magic. Heinz too grinned. This is fantastic. With this new power, breaking the blood barrier will be a breeze. Heinz interjected, we don't have time for that. Then I'll smash through it. Heinz too replied with a sly smile. A deafening explosion shattered the tomb's roof. Sung-hyun, standing amidst the rubble, smiled confidently. We found it. Heinz nodded, his eyes narrowing. This is what we came here for. Heinz too, gesturing to the glowing object before them, said, the second fragment of the immortal king. Heinz reached for it, his voice filled with awe. Another fragment. Amazing. As the fragment's power surged through him, he thought, even with the mind center filtering the negative thoughts, this fragment holds too many. He focused the mental power of all the clones on his core personality. Suddenly, a massive pillar of dark energy erupted skyward. Virik, observing from a distance, looked up in astonishment. What is this fog? Are we too late? He froze as his gaze locked on the floating skeleton radiating dark energy. That silhouette, it seems familiar. Virik barked orders to his subordinates. Attack it. The vampires unleashed a barrage of blood arrows, aiming for the figure. Heinz retaliated with dark magic, striking down one of the attackers with devastating force. A system window appeared. Skill evolution, regeneration, immortality. Skill acquired, forbidden knowledge. Personality status, Heinz Archlich. Meanwhile, the holy paladins arrived at the cemetery's outskirts. What is this? One asked, shielding his face. Smoke? Fire? It seems to be coming from Azanthu. He coughed, overwhelmed by the dark energy. Tuscan dismounted, his face grim as he examined the ashen residue. We're turning back. This isn't ordinary ash. What do we tell the saint? Another asked nervously. Tuscan looked up at the ominous energy pillar. Everything. This changes everything. The ominous energy surged in the air, thick with power and foreboding. System notification. The rebirth of the immortal king is imminent. Heinz stood motionless, overwhelmed by the rush of newfound strength. This is incredible, he thought, his mind racing. I've become 10 times stronger than before. A system window materialized before him, detailing his transformation. New skills acquired. Power of the immortal king fragment. Rapid rank advancement, plus 2/3 rank. Secret dark magic energy amplification. Traits gained. Evil wisdom. Unlocks insight into forbidden knowledge. Unconditional understanding of dark magic. All secrets revealed. As long as my source remains intact, I'll endlessly revive. An unkillable existence, he mused. The dark energy coursed through his body like a tidal wave, and Heinz unleashed it in an explosive attack. Tendrils of shadow surged toward the vampires surrounding him. Virik's eyes widened in alarm. What is this smoke? Is this a trap? What is your plan? A subordinate rushed to his side. My lord, we must retreat and recover our strength. Before the words could settle, the dark energy swallowed the subordinate whole, obliterating him in an instant. Virik froze, staring in horror at the remains of his servant. This is an attack spell? Dark thorns erupted from the shadows, piercing through Virik's chest. He screamed in agony, his strength waning rapidly. Heinz, through the avatar Hans, stepped forward, his cold gaze fixed on the pure-blooded vampire. You're stronger than the others, he said calmly, but right now you're nothing more than a blood bag to me. Virik gritted his teeth, his voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Where did you get such power? Did you truly absorb the fragment completely? How did you endure so much darkness alone? Heinz too smirked, stepping closer. Alone? He asked mockingly, leaning in. Who said I was alone? Before Virik could respond, Heinz too sank his fangs into the vampire's neck, drinking deeply. Virik's body convulsed, then went limp, crumpling to the ground. System notification. Conditions fulfilled, skill growth activated. Legacy, minor blood legacy, pure blood. Heinz too wiped the blood from his lips, his smile sharp and predatory. A pure-blooded vampire now? He murmured, savoring the moment. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. By devouring other vampires I can grow faster. He laughed darkly, his voice resonating with malevolent triumph. Let them wait for me. I'll devour them all, one by one. After some time in the forest, Rosalicia cried out that they needed Parita. Fearfully she asked what they should do now. With tears in her eyes, Rosalicia lamented that if Lady Parita had been there, they wouldn't have succumbed to the enemy so easily. Parita responded, stating that Virak had been defeated but warned against underestimating this adversary. She touched the lingering dark magic and noted that the fragments contained an overwhelming amount of power, indicating the enemy's formidable strength. As the sun began to rise, she urged them to return to the base quickly to request reinforcements. Elsewhere, a man sprinted through the city streets, shouting curses. Leaning against a wall, he demanded angrily, "They won't chase me to the very end, will they?" He blamed everything on the vampires, accusing them of arrogance before being destroyed in an instant. He cursed his own mistake of trusting them. From the shadows, Heinz too grabbed the man, dragging him away. A terrified scream echoed from the alley. Meanwhile, Sung Hyun reflected on leaving Hans in the city to deal with the remnants of Varkalak. He had also arranged for Heinz too to be connected to a minor merchant guild so he could escort Diana and her brother out of the city. Later, in the forest, Heinz too, holding a frying pan, joked that with enough pepper, he could make a special steak. Diana and her brother gazed at the meal with admiration, thanking him for the delicious food. The protagonist smiled, assuring them it was healthy and safe to eat. Sung Hyun thought about how their happiness stemmed from being free of danger. Smiling, the protagonist asked if they had an uncle who ran a store in eastern Lapillas. Diana nodded nervously, unsure if her uncle would be pleased to see them. He reassured her not to worry, and Sung Hyun considered giving them money if things didn't work out. A wave of sadness hit him as he thought about their eventual parting. When was the last time he'd felt this way? Perhaps he'd changed since arriving in this world. Diana called his name, reaching out with concern. "Are you okay? Do you need blood?" she asked. Laughing, the protagonist replied that he'd had enough to drink, having drained the vampires left in the village. At the same time, Hans, embodying another side of the protagonist, was reanimating the corpses of vampires in the cemetery. He decided it was time to finish up and retreat to their secure space, marveling at how convenient and boundless it was. He wondered if forbidden knowledge could help him create a similar subspace on Earth. Suddenly, blood magic struck him. Over Varkalak, a purebred vampire, confronted him with fury. "Still lingering in our city? Do you underestimate us so much?" she demanded, using blood magic to challenge his membership in the Oath of Defiance. Hans smirked, introducing himself as an honorary member of the Oath. She accused him of stealing the fragment of the immortal king and destroying their hideout. Holding a weapon forged from her blood, she declared it no longer mattered. He would die. Her attack was swift. Though he narrowly avoided a fatal blow, Hans felt the strength of a purebred vampire firsthand. Crashing into a barrier, he realized it was the work of her clan's blood mages. "Did you think escape would be so easy?" Over-taunted. The protagonist analyzed the barrier, recognizing he could break it but would need more time to adapt to his new power. Over vowed to crush his skull and personally reclaim the fragment. Grinning, the protagonist declared she should remember his name and that he was from the Oath of Defiance. "I am your death," he added dramatically. Though retreating for now, he promised to return. In true villain fashion, he made a theatrical exit, summoning Hans to escape. Over was shocked to see him bypass the barrier, while her subordinate deemed his departure inappropriate. Suddenly, an arrow struck one of Over's servants from behind, a holy silver arrow from the paladins. Realizing they were surrounded, Over clenched her teeth in fury, cursing the lich for delaying her. Wherever he had gone, she vowed to find him. She shouted furiously that she would find him and kill him no matter what. A while later, in the protagonist's room, Sung-hyun sighed in relief. "I'm still alive," he muttered. Hans remarked that the recall ability was like a cheat code, reaffirming its power. Sung-hyun cringed as he remembered the dramatic line he had uttered before using recall. Swinging his legs off the bed, he asked himself, "Why did I have to use such a typical villain line?" He groaned, clutching his face. "Am I crazy? What possessed me to say that?" Adopting Hans's persona, he tried to justify it. "You're proud of your strength, aren't you? You took down a group of evil vampires, saved a defenseless girl and her brother, and even protected an entire city. Sunghyun smiled at that thought. Now that I think about it, I feel like a hero. Stretching, he added, surely I've earned myself some karma points, right? Calling up the karma shop, he stared in disbelief at the system window. His balance was 731,002 points. How do I have over 700,000 points already? He exclaimed. Didn't I spend everything on upgrades? With a nervous laugh, he speculated that enraging the vampires and dark mages must have significantly boosted his karma. Dismissing the thought, he pressed the system window. I'll figure it out later. For now, should I upgrade my special skills again? A notification appeared. His limit on summoning avatars had increased. Smiling, he noted that his avatar count had gone up. But were there any new skills? The system revealed that he had acquired a special skill, Persona. Sunghyun beamed. This is exactly what I needed. Is Persona similar to Mind Center? I should check it out. After reading the description, he realized the skill allowed avatars to act as vessels for emotions, adapting and growing based on his needs. The system had clearly determined this skill was essential for him. I get it now, he thought. I've been forming connections, defeating powerful enemies and making a difference. But in reality, I've spent 2 years locked in this room. What happens there feels like a game, but the truth I've been avoiding is still here, right in front of me. He reflected on the loneliness, sadness, and anger he had suppressed, emotions that had accumulated over time. Turning to Hans, he said, I need to transfer these terrible feelings into a vessel. As he did, he felt a strange relief as though his emotions were neatly boxed away. Curious, he wondered how Hans, now burdened with those emotions, was handling it. Hans reassured him. Don't worry about me. Pain and despair have always been my companions. They don't bother me. Yet, Sunghyun noticed a subtle change in Hans's tone. Laughing, Hans confirmed, You noticed, huh? It dawned on Sunghyun that an avatar filled with emotions could develop its own personality. Before he could say more, a loud noise erupted outside. Was that an explosion? He asked, rushing to the window. Is there another villain? Here in the city? He groaned, holding his face. Let the guardians handle it. It's not directly in front of me like last time. It's none of my business. Hans interrupted. Do you need a reason to eradicate evil? Sunghyun met his gaze and realized the truth. Since transferring his negative emotions to Hans, things had become clearer. Avoidance had always been his habit. Despite his desire to defeat evil, he had lacked the courage to act. Hans, now exuding determination, declared, The world order is in chaos. Criminals are everywhere. It's time for me to become their law. Using his power and donning a mask, he left to confront the chaos. At the explosion site, residents gathered, expressing their frustration. How many times has this happened? Why haven't they called for reinforcements? Meanwhile, Hans observed the scene. He deduced that the villains had formed an organization, and their time was running out. He wouldn't leave empty-handed. Using dark magic, he created the Eye of Darkness, his new network of spies. You will be my eyes and ears in the shadows, he thought, ready to hunt down hidden sinners. In an alley nearby, a group of schoolchildren bullied a classmate. Bring him an ashtray, one taunted. They laughed as one boy held a cigarette to another, mocking him as the best ashtray ever. The schoolboy being held down screamed, begging them to stop. At that moment, a woman clutched her child tightly and asked where they could possibly run. A man, drunk and swinging his belt, shouted accusingly that she was lying to him. Meanwhile, a masked robber shattered a store window, climbed inside and declared, while opening the cash register, that this was all he needed. Hans observed it all, his thoughts dark and resolute. These villains were no better than trash, and he resolved to punish them. Their punishment would be a trauma so profound it would scar their souls. They would remember this day, and if evil ever sprouted within them again, darkness would come for them once more. Screams of terror echoed throughout the city. Hans felt himself growing more accustomed to his powers, but it wasn't enough, not nearly enough. There was still so much filth to cleanse. He needed to purify the entire city of evil. By the end of the night, Hans stretched and remarked how satisfying it was to rid the shadows of hidden garbage. While the Eye of Darkness had proven useful, its limitations were evident. In the presence of light, its power weakened and eventually vanished. He needed a more reliable method for detecting enemies. However, he couldn't unleash undead creatures into the city. What alternative did he have? The protagonist grumbled angrily about birds ruining his clothes, joking that he should just kill them all and make them his minions. Then, gazing at the birds in flight, he paused. Hans pointed out that an invisible, mobile eye capable of surveilling the city was an excellent idea. After some thought, the protagonist realized that familiars were a form of enslavement magic dark mages used to control animals. Hans, surrounded by birds, questioned why the magic didn't work for him. Sung-hyun decided to experiment with various methods to create a familiar, though his attempts had failed so far. Hans mused that it would be ideal if the familiars appeared normal yet remained infectious. However, simplifying their appearance by reducing magic power would weaken their infectious ability. Sung-hyun finally understood the complexities of the task. He likened it to debugging, where programmers grind their teeth in frustration. His latest attempt, a revised version of his contagious enslavement magic, was ready to test. Will it work this time? He wondered. A mutated cat leapt from a cage, leaving him disappointed yet again. After 3 weeks of research, significant progress still eluded him. Clicking his tongue, he eyed the last bird in the cage and muttered, "This one better work." As he carefully adjusted the amount of magic power, he grasped the bird and cast the spell again. Sighing in relief, he said he was finally done. But as the bird flew from his hands, he asked in surprise, "What does this mean?" Observing it closely, he realized it appeared normal now. The next step was testing its infectious ability. The bird landed among others, releasing dark energy. Sung-hyun's eyes lit up. "This is a success," he declared. The infected creatures would serve as his eyes and ears in the city. Stretching out his hand, he commanded, "Fly and find the enemies for me." Meanwhile, in a forest nearby, Lucius knelt and touched the ground, recalling Hans's words when he used the recall skill. Tuscan approached, informing him that his knights had arrived. Irritated, Tuscan added that after interrogating the remaining vampires, they learned these captives weren't allies of the immortal king's descendants. Lucius replied that more evidence was needed. The immortal king was regaining strength, though they hadn't yet confronted him. Using the magic within his cross to communicate, he asked respectfully if there was any news. A saint responded via magical transmission, reporting that traces of the immortal king's presence had been detected in a cave northwest of their location. Holding the cross tightly, Lucius expressed his gratitude and promised to meet their expectations. At the cave, Sung-hyun thought about how he had successfully trained his familiars to report encounters with monsters. Now he had to confirm that the information was accurate. But something felt off. The ground familiars weren't behaving as usual. Instead, they seemed to be fleeing. Were they frightened? If they had found a monster, they would have reported it immediately. This behavior could only mean one thing: humans? Why are people in such a remote area? He wondered. Could this be an ambush? But that seemed impossible. How could such a large group remain unnoticed while hiding their presence? Suddenly, one of his familiars was struck down. Tuscan stepped forward and declared, "You are a participant in the oath of disobedience. Your pathetic tricks won't work on us," Tuscan declared. "No evil can escape the saint's sight. You won't leave here alive." Drawing his weapon, he demanded surrender and promised divine justice. The protagonist recognized them immediately: Holy Knights. He had seen their emblem during his training in Brokislak. Divine power directly countered dark magic, which meant this would be a challenging fight. Hans, unshaken, asked how the servants of the church had managed to find him here. Tuscan struck him sharply with his weapon, silencing him. "You have no right to speak," he snapped. "Don't think you can fool me with your words." The protagonist muttered to himself that his opponent was far too stubborn. Should he deceive them and flee instead? Tuscan seemed to read his mind. "Cheap tricks won't work against us," he said, wielding light magic. "You cannot deceive the servants of the saint." A weapon infused with light pierced the protagonist, and he winced in pain. "Do you truly consider punishing villains a crime?" he asked. "Silence," Tuscan barked, his light magic intensifying. "From the moment you embraced forbidden power, you became one of them. A villain." Sung-hyun activated his dark magic and retorted, "Where's the logic in that?" He felt an unusual weakness. Something had been interfering with his magic recently. The Holy Knight's anthem began to play, sapping his strength. Tuscan ordered the singers to keep going. The hymn was draining Sung-hyun's energy, but he couldn't bring himself to harm innocents, even if it meant stopping the song. He groaned in frustration as a weapon stabbed him from behind. "Now's our chance," Tuscan declared. "Restrain him." Sung-hyun realized his mistake. He had been too careless and now he was bound in chains. These restraints were not ordinary, they blocked both his movements and magic. "Impressive work catching me," the protagonist admitted. Tuscan smirked. "Exactly as expected. No evil has ever escaped these chains. Will you resist any longer? Grinning, the protagonist replied, as if I'd make it that easy for you. He knew there was no reasoning with them. It was time to part ways. Let them think they had won. Tuscan, now wary, activated his light magic. I don't know what you're planning, but don't think I'll just stand by and let you try anything. He launched another attack. But the protagonist only smirked. The strength of the chains didn't matter anymore, because Hans was already free. Tuscan's eyes widened in disbelief. He broke the chains? Impossible. Who is this man? Later, lying exhausted on his bed, Sung-hyun sighed. Trouble seemed to follow him wherever he went. First, the Shadow faction and the Oath of Defiance. Then the Varkalak vampire clan. And now, the Paladin Order, one of the most powerful forces on the continent, had joined the list of his enemies. He called up the system window, his thoughts racing. There must be a reason for all this karma I've been accumulating. Is it because I keep attracting villains from across the continent? He groaned and decided to focus on his original plan for now. Sometime later, in the city, the protagonist prepared to test the fruits of his research. Controlling the essence of black magic was simple in principle. His familiars could serve as his eyes and ears, even covering a massive area like Seoul with ease. His thoughts were interrupted by a terrified scream. A girl, tears streaming down her face, begged for mercy. Please, I'll do anything. Just let me go. She spotted a figure in the window and pleaded, help me. I'm being held here against my will. Don't just leave me. The man holding her sneered, gripping her hair tightly. Scream all you want, he said. No one will hear you except me. He explained that his ability rendered them invisible to others. Go on, scream louder, he taunted. You've got such a cute voice. As he raised his weapon to strike her, he boasted, you'll be among the top 3 in my collection. At that moment, Hans burst through the ceiling, wielding dark magic. The man with the knife asked, bewildered, how could this happen? My ability is sound suppression and invisibility, isn't it? The protagonist glared at him, his voice cold. That won't work on me. Your vile deeds end today. Angered, the man demanded, who are you? A guardian? How did you even get here? Holding the weapon to the woman's throat, he threatened, don't come any closer or she dies. Sung-hyun activated his dark magic. Is that so? He said, snatching the woman away with a surge of power and holding her safely in his arms. Now what will you do? The man with the knife gasped in disbelief. A Ritterni? You dare to steal my prey? Then I'll kill her along with you. He lunged at the protagonist but was suddenly restrained by tendrils of dark energy. Judging by his words, Hans deduced, this isn't your first victim. Binding the man tightly with dark energy, he pressed his fingers to his forehead. You won't mind if I confirm that for myself? Using necromancy, Sung-hyun activated the Cry of the Dead skill, peering into the man's memories. He saw vivid scenes of the man torturing and murdering his victims. You're a serial killer, Hans declared grimly. I don't need to look any further. His tone sharpened. I sentence you to death. The man screamed in agony as the dark magic overwhelmed him. Sung-hyun muttered, even death is too merciful for someone like you. He considered for a moment. But I need an undead servant for my work. You'll do just fine. With a cruel smile, he activated a spell that drained the blood from the man's body. The system window appeared, announcing the creation of a new undead, Ghast. Satisfied, the protagonist said, I'll need to prepare the subspace portal. It'll come in handy later. Looking at the unconscious woman, Hans pondered. What should I do with her? Clean up the mess? Maybe just call emergency services. A short while later, the police arrived, cordoning off the crime scene. Park Han-cheol, leader of the Special Ops Bureau's criminal investigation team, stood outside, observing the scene through the window. A suited officer approached him. We've reviewed the footage. It's definitely the serial killer we've been after. Han-cheol, irritated, asked, and the person who stopped him? A Ritterni? The officer nodded. Confirmed. But the killer's body is missing. There's evidence of dark magic and blood at the scene. Someone definitely died here. It's a mess. This case is a nightmare, Han-cheol muttered. A rogue playing hero. Do they think the law doesn't exist? Meanwhile, the protagonist stood atop a roof, surveying the city. A passerby on the street pointed upward. Is that a sleepwalker? Who is he? Hans petted a cat perched beside him. I wonder what they'd say if they saw my face, he mused. Elsewhere, at the South Korean Citizens Repatriation Association, Seoul South Branch, a secretary entered Yoon Ji-yoon's office. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something urgent. Yoon, still recovering from a late night, groaned. What time is it? What's going on? The secretary handed her a file. A request from the Special Ops Bureau. They're investigating the serial killer case and... Yoon skimmed the file. So, the dark mage in the long coat and mask strikes again. Public security's already a mess. She sighed, placing a tablet over her head. We should hand this over to that guy. The secretary, shocked, exclaimed, That guy? The murderer? Yoon slammed her fists on the desk. Exactly. He's competent. If we tame him, he'll make a great asset. The secretary frowned. You want him as a guardian? Are you serious? Stop complaining and get back to work, Yoon retorted, gesturing at the towering stack of documents. Frustrated, she threw her hands in the air. I'm going to tear those villains apart myself. Later, Han stood by a window, stretching. With a satisfied smile, he muttered, punishing villains feels good. His gaze swept the bustling streets. Soon I'll have to deal with a few more pests. The villains' organization was wreaking havoc, causing complete chaos. Having pieced together the situation to some extent, Hines decided it might be time to shift his focus to the other world. When he arrived, Uncle Diana and Aaron were in tears, shouting his name. The children ran to him, embracing him tightly. You've been through so much, he said warmly. You've worked so hard. We're fine, the children exclaimed, their faces glowing with relief and joy. Hines watched the scene with a smile, thinking how happy he was to see them reunited. He seemed like a genuinely kind person, one whose actions didn't raise suspicion. If he had acted otherwise, Hines might have resorted to threats, but it didn't seem necessary. Their uncle took Hines's hand, thanking him profusely for bringing the children back safely. Hines waved his hand dismissively. I didn't really do much, it simply had to happen. Diana approached him, gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you for everything, she said, wrapping him in a hug. I'm so happy. He patted her head gently. This isn't goodbye. I'll visit often. Stay healthy and behave well. Still crying, Diana admitted, I'm a little worried. You seem to be changing a lot. But her faith in him as a good person reassured her. He hesitated. Am I really changing? He asked himself, uneasy. Perhaps it was the influence of his persona skill. Hines was a blend of negative emotions, driven by a desire for recognition, an attempt to draw attention through intrigue and deception. Yet his character now seemed calm and stable. Diana, looking at him sadly, asked where he was headed next. I'll seize every opportunity, he replied, and embark on a pilgrimage. Sometime later, in the capital of the kingdom of Talia, Teleria, a city known as the heart of the Church of the Goddess and home to its grandest temple, Hines wandered the streets, observing everything with keen interest. Stepping into a secluded alleyway, he ensured no one was following before activating his abilities to summon his fourth avatar, Heinrich. This avatar embodied key traits: a composed mind, persona, super regeneration, and calm demeanor. Its unique feature, the spirit of a warrior, granted additional bonuses to skills and experience acquired through combat and training. Handing a bag to Heinrich, Hines instructed, walking through the holy city as a vampire isn't ideal. Take this and step into the light. Heinrich made his way to the elder, who sat on a chair surrounded by his subordinates. Next, believer, step forward, the elder called. In response, Heinrich emptied a bag of gold at the elder's feet, startling everyone. The elder began counting the coins, stacking them neatly. How much is this? He asked, astonished. This is everything I have, Heinrich declared, placing a hand over his heart. I wish to dedicate it all to the goddess and serve as a paladin to fulfill her will. Reflecting on his past avatars, an undead, a dark mage, and a vampire, Heinrich mused that this time his form would embody light. A paladin respected by all. The elder slammed his fist on the table, sending coins scattering. Instructor Marco stepped forward with a hearty laugh. A sincere young man like you will make an excellent paladin. The elder, still hesitant, said, Wait. No matter the sacrifice, we can't just accept an unknown person as a paladin. Marco reassured him. Don't worry. Training reveals a recruit's true nature. Are you prepared to show us yours? Heinrich nodded eagerly. I am. Weeks into the grueling training, Heinrich gasped for air, sweat pouring down his face. I need water, he cried moments before a massive iron ball flew toward him. What is this madness? He thought, summoning his strength to stop the ball. Exactly a month had passed since his training began. Initially, he thought the Paladin Order was noble and refined. Instead, it was filled with relentless macho warriors. The room echoed with shouts of encouragement as paladins trained intensely. A fellow paladin approached number 12, chastising him. "You're losing focus. Did you forget the rules? You can't stop praying during training." The paladin knelt in front of him, shouting, "Good. Now concentrate and recite the prayers again." Number 12 resumed, reciting fervently as he lifted the iron ball. The coach praised him. "Well done. Keep focusing. Let prayer restore your strength." From the sidelines, Heinrich observed. He admitted that the repeated prayers, despite being grueling, effectively strengthened faith and divine power. Nearby, two paladins were hitting a third with sledgehammers, who shouted gleefully, "My back feels great today." Heinrich couldn't help but think, this is absolute madness. Let them hit him even harder. Another paladin stood tall, attempting to crush a spiked iron ball with his bicep. Around him, the group shouted praises to the goddess, proclaiming their ever-growing faith. Watching from the sidelines, Heinrich couldn't help but think, do they really need to train like this? On the second floor, the trainer approached Marco, questioning him about the new recruit. Is he just a simpleton? Marco smirked. And if he is, what of it? The trainer chuckled. Well, even before baptism, he's managing to lift such massive weights. His shoulders and lower body are already unnaturally strong. I can't wait to see how baptism will transform him. Hearing this, Heinrich felt a wave of discomfort. Why are they drooling over my body? He thought, trying to suppress his unease. He didn't want to attract attention from this group of apparent muscle fanatics. Time passed, and Heinrich continued to endure the relentless training. During one particularly grueling session, he paused, gasping for breath. It had been 3 months since he began. Without his wind instrument and super regeneration skills, he would have collapsed long ago. His body and endurance had improved significantly, but the endless perversions of the group were the real challenge. Marco approached him, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Finished with lower body training? How about we hit some chest exercises together? Marco removed his shirt, flexing dramatically in front of Heinrich. Panicking, Heinrich let out a distressed scream. The trainer joined in, striking a dramatic pose. What a beautiful day. Don't you agree we should do some solid back training? Heinrich's discomfort grew unbearable as he tried to suppress a shudder. Why are these muscle perverts targeting me? Later, Heinrich sat near a building with another paladin, stretching his neck. I think I'm starting to lose my mind, he muttered. Not a single day goes by without someone inviting me to train with them. The other paladin laughed. That's because the elders have low expectations for themselves. As they spoke, a group of smiling paladins passed by, laughing among themselves. Suddenly, two figures emerged from the building, Archbishop Lucius and Tuscan. They waved at the paladins, their presence commanding attention. One of the senior members announced, "We've received orders for an expedition with the full contingent of crusaders. When do we depart?" Heinrich noticed one of the paladins and thought, isn't that the guy who pointed his sword at Hans? The returning group must have been searching for Hans. Could they really have been hunting him all this time? Shortly afterward, the recruits gathered in a grand hall. An elder stood at the altar, addressing the group. We are here today for the baptism ceremony of the most promising recruits. Due to special circumstances, the ceremony has been moved forward. We hope for your understanding. One recruit whispered, why are they holding an event that usually happens only once every 6 months? Why now? Heinrich had his suspicions. They're desperate for reinforcements to pursue the heir to the immortal king. But this is a perfect opportunity for me to test my plan. The elder called out, Max Veroin? Max stepped forward, and the elder asked, are you ready to dedicate your life to the goddess and serve as her paladin? I am, Max declared confidently. Heinrich observed quietly, reflecting on the process. Those who undergo baptism transfer all their mana to the deity, losing the ability to use magic. In return, the deity grants a sacred blessing of immense power. The strength of the blessing depends entirely on the recruit's faith. The purer and more unwavering the faith, the stronger the paladin becomes. The elder called the next name, Heinrich. Smiling, Heinrich stepped forward, thinking, I'm fortunate to have devised such a brilliant plan. Until now, he had used his center of the mind skill primarily to suppress external stimuli and control emotions. But he had realized it could be reversed. By combining this with the persona skill, he could project the illusion of absolute faith in the goddess. As the high priest extracted his mana, Heinrich would filter out any mistrust or doubt, leaving only pure, unblemished energy. When the high priest initiated the ritual, the room began to glow with an intense sacred light. Gasps and whispers filled the air. "This is unprecedented," someone exclaimed. "The sacred power is reaching the very head of the goddess's statue." The high priest, astonished, placed a hand on Heinrich's shoulder. "You've just undergone baptism, yet your sacred power rivals that of a priestess. Such unwavering faith. I'm truly impressed." Heinrich's plan had worked perfectly, and he smiled inwardly. Heinrich continued to train diligently, a smile forming on his face as he thanked those around him. Suddenly, a system window appeared before him, informing him that he had acquired the holy baptism skill. This skill allowed him to distribute spiritual power more effectively among his avatars. As he examined his hand, he pondered, "Is this the limit of holy power?" The thought brought him some relief. He had been skeptical that a false faith built on illusion could yield any results. Still, it seemed the skill hadn't worked to its full potential. He reflected further, the church's deity appears closer to the system, a personal god tied to the individual. When he opened his mind earlier, he felt a peculiar sensation. If he had to describe it, it was akin to curiosity, a distant, watchful presence. Is this what it means to be monitored? He wondered. Such power, he decided, should only ever be used for good. Later, in one of the meeting rooms, Lucius and Tuscan stood before a tactical map, moving pieces around as they discussed their strategy. "This is a mess," Tuscan said grimly. "We've been searching for a month and haven't found even a single village connected to the heir of the immortal king." Lucius sighed. "I have nothing to present to the deity." He glanced at Tuscan and added, "And beyond that, I sense the kingdom of Talia's support is waning. The vampire organization hidden within their borders is likely involved." Tuscan moved a few pieces on the board and replied, "During the pursuit of Hans, the misunderstandings surrounding the vampire slope and the oath of disobedience have grown too large to ignore." He picked up one of the game pieces, continuing, "The assassination squad has failed to achieve any meaningful results. Political pressure from the state is mounting, and they're leveraging this situation against us." Slamming his hand against his head in frustration, Lucius declared, "The assassination squad will be disbanded. My subordinates will return everyone to the capital." Tuscan nodded in acknowledgement and left to carry out the orders. As he walked away, he thought about the precarious situation they were in. "We're surrounded on all sides, and the paladins' numbers are no longer sufficient. What should I do with this knowledge?" Looking out onto the training yard, he observed the recruits sparring. "Are these the ones baptized today?" he wondered. Suddenly, something caught his attention, a recruit striking Heinrich with a weapon. Heinrich reacted instantly, countering with an elbow to the face that sent his opponent sprawling to the ground, disarmed. The trainer shouted, "Heinrich wins this battle." A system window appeared before Heinrich, announcing that his avatar had achieved enlightenment through repeated training. He had unlocked the Crusader fighting technique skill. As he stood there, Heinrich noticed a wound on his body healing rapidly. With his super regeneration and newfound sacred power, the injury disappeared entirely. The defeated recruit, wiping sweat from his face, asked, "Did you let me hit you on purpose?" Heinrich extended a hand to help him up. "The effort was worth it," he said with a smile. "Tactics are my style." Yet inwardly he thought, this still isn't enough. To grow further, I need to evolve my abilities. At that moment, Tuscan approached, his expression serious. "Your sacred power is remarkable," he said. "You're already at the level of a trainer or a high-ranking paladin." The defeated recruit looked shocked by Tuscan's words. Tuscan continued, "But you're not experienced enough to be a full paladin just yet." Heinrich tilted his head, curious. "What do you mean?" Tuscan smiled knowingly. "You've likely felt it, more than others." He extended his hand to Heinrich. "I can make you much stronger. Will you come with me to the Rosalia Temple?" The protagonist inquired about his purpose in the Grand Temple, to which the response came as a question. Did he have any particular issue? Heinrich extended his hand reassuringly, stating that there was no problem and affirming his desire to accompany him. Tuscan, with a dissatisfied expression, began walking away, remarking that if he wanted to follow, he should do so immediately. The protagonist hurried after the paladin, requesting time to gather his belongings, but Tuscan advised him to entrust that task to someone else. They entered a room and stood on glowing runes. Tuscan placed a hand on the protagonist's shoulder, acknowledging how sudden everything seemed. He assured him that everything would be explained in detail later. The protagonist nodded, indicating his understanding. Soon they arrived at the renowned Great Temple of Rosalia, the largest sanctuary of the church, positioned at the continent's center. This sacred site was where both the father and the goddess had once dwelled, marking the heart of the faith. Inside, Rister greeted them warmly, expressing her hope that their long journey hadn't been too exhausting. They knelt before her, expressing their gratitude. The protagonist reflected on entering this sacred space, where the goddess resided, as an opportunity for immense growth. He believed it to be the ideal place to develop his skills and gain recognition as a paladin. Determined, he resolved to hone his abilities while handling covert tasks with Hans's assistance. Meanwhile, Hans sat atop a rooftop surrounded by corpses, scrolling through news about the saint on his phone. Acknowledging his newfound fame, he noted that remnants of a human trafficking ring had been eliminated. However, something peculiar caught his attention: mentions of a divine retribution society by the defeated villains. They had cursed him repeatedly, claiming the society would not forgive anyone who failed to act against him. Hans suspected this society was linked to multiple organizations. Stretching as he stood, he resolved to investigate further and continue dismantling their operations. He mused about dividing his profits, now contemplating how best to manage his newfound wealth. Later, Hans walked down the street wearing a mask, considering the risks of trading large quantities of valuable, mysterious items under the guise of the Haho mask persona. Any sudden activity might make him a prime suspect. Entering a discreet establishment, he handed a bag of money to an employee and expressed his intent to sell. The employee scoffed, questioning if Hans mistook the place for a pawn shop. However, Hans emptied the bag's contents, revealing its valuable items. The employee, visibly stunned, quickly began examining the goods. He realized the badges belonged to a group involved in human trafficking, a trading syndicate. He had heard rumors that this syndicate had been dismantled by a masked man. The protagonist turned to the person before him and asked if he was interested in the deal. The man grew visibly nervous and instructed him to use the back door, warning him not to try leaving any other way. Following the instructions, the protagonist eventually arrived at the correct location. A masked man greeted him, asking if he was there to sell something. Hans confirmed, then inquired if payment could be made in a form other than cash. Hans handed over a bag and the masked man began examining its contents. He asked if Hans was looking for material goods and, if so, what exactly he needed. Hans pointed out that he required a lottery ticket for a grand prize, preferably one that could be used immediately. Cash, he explained, was useless to him unless it could be spent. What he needed were legal funds for his real identity, Sung-hyun, and a lottery ticket would provide clean, untraceable money. The masked man confirmed that a lottery ticket was possible but mentioned the commission would be steep. Hans assured him it wasn't a problem and asked how much it could sell for. The masked man replied that it would be 6-1, with a redemption period of 4 months. Hans requested 2 tickets, but the masked man stated that the payment provided wouldn't cover that. Unfazed, Hans assured him there was no need to worry and retrieved gold bars from his subspace storage. He asked if those would suffice. The masked man, stunned, felt the bars and asked incredulously, "A subspace storage tool? Who are you? These are extraordinary materials. Where did you get them?" Hans, annoyed at the man's curiosity, complained about being touched and stated he wasn't there to chat. He urged the masked man to finish the deal quickly. Apologizing, the masked man agreed to proceed. As the transaction concluded, Hans used his heightened senses and noted the faint scent of blood lingering in the air. It wasn't his imagination after all. Moving closer, he remarked that this wouldn't be their last deal and predicted they'd see each other often in the future. Later, Hans stepped outside, smiling as he inspected the checks in his hands. He mused aloud about how he'd used his dreams to win the lottery. Now he pondered what to purchase. Subordinates would make such errands easier, as constantly running back and forth was inefficient. Taking a moment to enjoy the cool night air, he observed the bustling streets. Only a few months ago, they had been eerily empty due to the human trafficking syndicate's presence. Now life had returned and the streets were alive once again. Perhaps it was all the rumors he had heard, but he felt relieved to know that he was somehow involved in promoting peace. Out of nowhere, Gamma approached from behind and whispered in his ear, asking where he was from. Startled, the protagonist turned around, alarmed. He thought, who is this? How did he sneak up on me unnoticed? Gamma, noticing his reaction, tried to calm him down, assuring him there was no reason to worry. He simply wanted to have a conversation. The protagonist, still uneasy, asked what exactly Gamma was talking about. He had snuck up behind him and even sniffed him. What was going on? Gamma asked if he was a vampire. The protagonist froze. That's right, Gamma confirmed. He was at level 6, born from Demir's transformation. Gamma pressed further. What's your name? When did you return to Earth? The protagonist, thinking that yet another vampire traveler from another dimension had appeared, realized he needed to come up with something quick to get out of this situation. However, without realizing it, he began answering questions he hadn't planned on, his mind seemingly under some sort of hypnosis. He found himself saying, "My name is Heinz and I haven't been on Earth for a long time." He thought to himself, why am I answering so easily? Is this all his mind control at work? Gamma smiled. Very good, he said. So you're a newcomer who's just returned to Earth. Let me introduce myself properly. He handed the protagonist a business card. I'm with the Blood Pack organization, which encompasses all the vampires on Earth. My job is to track down those who have recently returned. The protagonist took the card, still processing the information, and asked, is such an organization real? Gamma sighed and explained that if the protagonist wanted to survive, they'd better stick together. There wasn't much choice in the matter. The protagonist looked at him in disbelief and asked, by the way, what did you mean by level? Gamma, noticing his growing curiosity, suggested they continue the conversation elsewhere. If you're starting to show interest, let's go somewhere more private. He pulled out his car keys and asked if the protagonist wanted to visit the organization. Seeing the sleek car, the protagonist agreed to go with him. Meanwhile, Jean Soren had been quietly observing the entire interaction from a distance. She relayed the update to headquarters through her earpiece. The target is moving according to plan. We are following him. After some time they arrived at the location. Gamma encouraged him not to hesitate and to step inside. The protagonist, curious, asked what kind of place this was. Gamma explained that every vampire has a unique vampire factor that determines their strength level. They measure and rank these factors by level, and with the help of a magic circle, they can assess a vampire's level precisely. Gamma led him into a room filled with vampires and runes. Heinz was astonished by what he saw, wondering if this was truly a magic circle. The scene struck him as highly suspicious. Gamma gestured toward the circle, urging him to enter it without delay. The protagonist hesitated, thinking he could cancel his participation if it turned out to be dangerous. However, the presence of a skull emanating dark magic caught his attention. Examining it more closely, he realized this was no ordinary dark magic. It involved shamanism, curses, alchemy, and various other mystical practices, all fused together. He wondered how such a thing could even exist. Since the returnees began appearing about 20 years ago, magical tools remained rare, and magical technology had not advanced significantly. This was due to the differences in energy laws between abilities and dimensions. Yet, here was an organization capable of merging such disparate powers. The Blood Pack, it seemed, was far more impressive than he had anticipated. One of the vampires asked him to extend his hand. The vampire made a small cut on Heinz's palm, warning him it might sting briefly. To Heinz's surprise, his blood began to levitate, forming 5 orbs. A vampire noted that this indicated he was at level 5. Observing the tight connection between the orbs, they commented on his strong regenerative abilities. The protagonist thought about purebreds from Alterica, estimating their levels to be around 5 or 6. Gamma smiled knowingly, remarking that he was already nervous. Coming from a dimension no one had heard of, Heinz had only reached level 5, a mere waste of time. At this level, amputating limbs wasn't necessary. The vampires in the room all agreed and activated their abilities. Alarmed, Heinz realized there was another motive behind this ritual. It was far too elaborate for a simple level assessment. He urgently needed to summon help. At that moment, a knock at the door startled everyone, making Gamma visibly tense. The door burst open as Rand stormed in, commanding everyone to freeze. She declared her intent to apprehend Gamma, a level 6 vampire from the Blood Pack, for kidnapping and killing other vampires. Gamma appeared unfazed, questioning her rude intrusion. The protagonist found Rand familiar but couldn't place where he had seen her before. Rand pointed out that when she first heard rumors of vampires being abducted, she doubted their truth, but now the evidence was undeniable. She demanded that Gamma release the vampires and surrender. Gamma mocked her, calling her a naive servant of the Blood Pack. He questioned why vampires needed to live in subjugation, follow human rules, and hide underground. Rand, enraged, argued that it was the actions of warlike vampires like him that forced their kind into hiding. Gamma dismissed her argument and asked whether her comrades shared her perspective. This caused doubt to spread among the vampires behind her. Shocked, Rand questioned their loyalty. Just then, one of her allies betrayed her, activating his ability and striking her down. As she collapsed, she demanded to know why he had turned against her. The traitor explained that in his dimension he was a powerful lord. Now, trapped in this reality, he was reduced to working as a bouncer in a club. Not all vampires could adapt to her way of life. Gamma leaned in and Rand, struggling, asked about his ultimate plan. Was he kidnapping vampires to start a rebellion against the Blood Pack? Gamma smirked and dismissed her as foolish. Such an endeavor would take centuries. Instead, he revealed that they had discovered a way to grow stronger quickly. He demonstrated this by lifting the body of a vampire and alluded to breaking a taboo. Shocked, Rand accused him of creating mad vampires again. Hines, observing, realized she was referring to cannibalism among vampires. While it wasn't practiced on Earth, when vampires from different dimensions consumed one another, their vampire factors merged, increasing their strength but at a severe cost. This act often led to profound mental instability, a grim legacy from their ancestors. If someone fails to control themselves, they become mad vampires, driven insane by an unquenchable thirst. The first appearance of a mad vampire marked them as a global threat. Gamma, however, smiled confidently and assured everyone that this wasn't a concern. After extensive research, they had discovered a way to remove residual bloodlust. Suddenly, Gamma's victim began screaming in agony, exclaiming that they were being used as experimental material. The protagonist observed the situation closely, realizing that the magic circle wasn't merely for separating empirical factors. It was designed to transfer a drug to vampires without causing side effects. Minion reminded Gamma of his promise, pointing out the risks he took to follow him secretly. Gamma, keeping his word, tossed him a pill. Minion consumed it and his body began to transform, becoming larger and stronger. Smiling, he marveled at his newfound strength, unable to believe the change. Grabbing Rand by the throat, he demanded more pills immediately, threatening violence otherwise. Feigning panic, Gamma urged Minion to stop, assuring him that while he was pleased with his strength, he needed to be patient. After all, another guest had arrived before him and was still waiting. Surely it wasn't too much to ask to wait a little longer? The protagonist rose to his feet, calmly stating that there were 2 purebreds and 4 half-breeds, proof that cannibalism worked. Gamma looked at him, stunned. Filled with newfound strength, Hines expressed his eagerness to see just how powerful he could become. As he prepared to absorb the others, chaos erupted. The vampires screamed in confusion and fear. Suddenly, Hines and his army burst into the room. Addressing the group, he mocked their attempt to hide but scolded them for neglecting their safety. From now on, no one would leave this place without his permission. His army launched their attack, causing Minion to panic. He turned to Gamma, demanding answers about who their attackers were. Gamma roared for everyone to stay together, warning that separation would mean death. Using his abilities, he charged into battle, targeting Hines directly. Hines observed Minion's unusual transformation, noting that vampires from different dimensions often had distinct appearances. Slamming his staff to the ground, Hines summoned magical spikes that pierced through Minion's body. Smirking, Hines declared that minimizing casualties was part of his plan. He leaped into the fray, mocking Minion's organic transformation, claiming it posed no threat. Biting into Minion, Hines thought to himself that there would be more prey ahead. Minion screamed in pain and confusion as Hines drank his blood and heard his thoughts. Minion lamented his betrayal and his determination to survive, refusing to accept his end. Wiping his face, Hines remarked that insanity was far worse, as he could hear every obsessive thought coursing through Minion's mind. To his surprise, his teeth began to fall out, a sign of his empirical factors evolving and merging. A system notification appeared, informing Hines that he had gained a special ability, hybrid evolution. This ability significantly enhanced his physical attributes whenever he absorbed new empirical factors, allowing him to steal traits from the target's bloodline. Turning to Gamma, Hines remarked that this power was quite impressive. If he were to lose control, he could become exceptionally dangerous. Now he needed an organization to enforce his will. The Blood Pack could serve his purpose, or they would face the alternative of joining his undead army. As the battle continued, Hines devoured the remaining vampires. Another system notification informed him that he had acquired a new vampire trait, incite. This skill allowed him to assess the physical condition and stats of his enemies. Hines dismissed it as relatively useless but realized that vampires possessed a supernatural ability called heritage, tied to their origins. Using hybrid evolution, he could master this ability and steal all their powers. Gamma, now crucified, demanded to know how Hines had managed to remain sane while devouring his own kind. Approaching him with a grin, Hines taunted Gamma, asking if he was curious about how to resist corruption. The secret, he teased, was to ignore the whispers that accompanied the act. Gamma, panicked and disbelieving, screamed in protest. His cries turned into agony as another system notification revealed that Heinz had gained a new skill, camouflage, which allowed him to conceal his presence. Observing Gamma's transformed state, Heinz smiled slyly, commenting that Gamma must have been using camouflage all along. Not bad, he remarked, relishing his growing power. There were many ways he could use this ability. Should he dive into this bastard's thoughts? Gamma reflected on research, collaboration, support, and the public retribution technology. He also recalled a promise he had made to Mr. Beta. The protagonist panicked, wondering who the hell is this? Was this person Gamma's patron? And once again the Public Retribution Society was mentioned. It seemed like this intricate ritual was also their doing. What were these people planning, aiding the blood pack like this? Later that night Heinz and So-Ran were driving through the city together. Heinz glanced at her and asked if she was finally coming to her senses. Startled, she yelled at him, calling him trash for selling his life and demanding to know where he was taking her. Grabbing him by the throat, she shouted furiously. Heinz gasped, pleading for her to stop and look around. They had captured him too, and if she didn't let go they'd crash. Reluctantly, So-Ran released him and apologized, asking for an explanation of what had happened. Heinz asked if she had heard of Ho-Ho's mask. He mentioned that the masked figure had escaped during the chaos when a group of vigilantes burst in. Placing her hand over her heart, So-Ran expressed her gratitude, saying that even amidst the chaos, Heinz had gone out of his way to save her. As Heinz observed her closely, her face and voice felt oddly familiar. Yet no matter how much he tried to place her, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd seen her somewhere before. He asked why members of the Blood Pack were fighting one another. So-Ran explained that the group was divided between radicals and moderates. She and her team had discovered evidence that the radicals had kidnapped one of their own, so they infiltrated the radicals' territory. She expressed relief that they had escaped in one piece and even managed to learn the radicals' plans. She intended to inform the higher-ups and put an end to it. Heinz, skeptical, thought to himself that resolving this wouldn't be so simple. It was likely that even the highest-ranking members of the radicals were involved. So-Ran cheerfully asked about Heinz's identity. Who was he as her savior? He seemed incredibly strong. Heinz replied that she could call him whatever she wanted, as she felt comfortable. She asked if she could call him up for convenience, to which he nodded, mentioning he'd recently returned to Earth and hadn't formed any bonds yet. Heinz explained he had followed Gamma out of curiosity about the blood pack. So-Ran smiled and suggested that he join the group, mentioning that most vampires were part of it. She assured him that moderate vampires didn't engage in shady activities and had steady blood supplies through partnerships with blood banks. Heinz expressed interest and So-Ran promised to show him more. After some time they arrived at their destination. Inside, a little girl named Nahi ran to the door when she heard them. So-Ran greeted her warmly and Nahi hugged her, asking if she was okay. Smiling, So-Ran reassured her, introducing Heinz as their friend and a new member of the blood pack. Nahi, looking nervous, greeted Heinz. He waved back with a friendly smile. So-Ran patted Nahi's head, asking her to stay and play while she showed Heinz the room. Nahi agreed but asked her to return soon. On the way up, Heinz commented that Nahi seemed very small. So-Ran clarified that it wasn't just her appearance. Nahi wasn't a returner. Confused, Heinz asked if all vampires weren't returners. So-Ran explained that wasn't true. Nahi had been born and raised on Earth, but her father, a returner, had turned her into a vampire to save her from a chronic illness. This revelation made Heinz reflect on why the government wanted strict control over vampires. In many ways they were like an infectious disease. So-Ran continued, explaining that turning someone on Earth took significantly more power than usual. Nahi's father had reached his limit but wanted her to live confidently, even under the sun. Eventually they reached a room. So-Ran let Heinz in, telling him to call her if he needed anything. Since it was late, she suggested he rest. She said goodbye with a distinct gesture. Heinz froze, startled. That gesture, her voice, it all seemed so familiar. Pointing at her, he asked, "Is she the streamer Orchid?" So-Ran's eyes widened in shock and she screamed in embarrassment, covering her face. She stammered, asking if he'd just mentioned her stream. She blushed, saying that moment from her stream was stuck in her head, then nervously asked if he was one of her subscribers. Heinz awkwardly waved, denying it, explaining that her videos had simply popped up in his recommendations a couple of times. She sighed in relief and said it was a good thing because she had nearly died of embarrassment. She explained that she had been a trainee, and after quitting she felt lost and decided to try streaming. Heinz asked how old she was back then. She replied that she was 22 now and had awakened at 19. Then she asked his age and when he had awakened. Feeling awkward, Heinz quickly shut the door behind him, calling out that he'd tell her later. She blinked in surprise, wondering aloud if she had said something wrong. Inside, Heinz exhaled deeply, realizing she was much younger than he had assumed, which explained his casual tone earlier. At 20 years old himself, he found it surprising that she was older than him. Lying on the bed, he muttered to himself that regardless, she still looked familiar. As a streamer, she was quite famous. Maybe he should look her up online? Opening her streaming page, he found a notification about her recent hiatus. In the post, she mentioned taking a break from streaming for about a week due to work obligations. She assured her audience she'd return as soon as possible and hoped to see them again soon. Heinz swiped through the updates, thinking to himself. After she posted this, she went straight to the crime scene? If he hadn't intervened, that post might have been her last. The thought unsettled him. The situation had been far too close and dangerous. The next morning, Heinz woke to the sound of So-Ran yelling into her phone. She was shouting, demanding to know why there was no evidence. How could they find nothing? Groaning from his headache, Heinz got out of bed, wondering what the commotion was about so early in the morning. Heading downstairs, he heard her shouting again. He says there's no proof of this. How is that even possible? Noticing Heinz, So-Ran paused her argument and asked if he was awake. Holding the phone away, she explained that her colleagues had gone to the crime scene yesterday, but everything had been burned. There was no evidence left, and now they couldn't act against the radicals. Heinz clenched his fist, thinking to himself, they've gone too far. Were they trying to erase all traces of me? Out loud, he sympathized, saying it was unfortunate, but then he asked her something. Could she tell him where the radicals' base was? Her eyes widened in surprise. Why do you need to know where the radicals' base is? She asked. Then, raising her voice, she added, don't tell me you're against the blood pack. Heinz raised his hands to calm her down, assuring her it wasn't the case. He explained that the radicals were dangerous, and it would be better to know their locations to avoid them. Taking a deep breath, So-Ran nodded, placing a hand over her heart. That does make sense, she admitted. She pulled up some information on her phone, handing it to him. Here, hold on to this. Avoid the marked locations and you'll stay safe. Heinz studied the screen, noting the map of locations. While doing so, So-Ran offered to cook him something since he was already up. He waved his hands, politely declining. No need to trouble yourself, he said. I'll grab something nearby. There are plenty of good restaurants around. Looking at the map's marked spots again, Heinz licked his lips and muttered, that's why I'm thinking of going for a walk and finding something good to eat. Moments later, he appears indulging in the blood of vampires, as if feasting at a banquet in a restaurant. Suddenly, a still-living vampire calls him a bastard, warning that he cannot leave peacefully because the clan leader will hunt him down, leaving not a single bone marrow behind. The protagonist asks if they know who he is and thanks them, mentioning that after stealing the concealment skill from these vampires, they are now worse than blind fools. So, he won't have any trouble for now. He then demands they reveal where their other friends are. By touching the vampire's head, he accesses their memories and discovers that the next day, there will be a gathering in a secret location, and their leader will also be present. The protagonist sees this as a perfect opportunity to eliminate all of them and feed. After finishing off the last living vampire, he says it's time to clean up. Using the blood bloom skill, he spreads blood to create a burning flower that won't extinguish unless the caster wishes and burns only the target. This new technique, which he acquired after stealing from the vampires, is perfect for erasing his traces. As for magical traces, he'll use his concealment skill to hide them. With these two skills, no one will be able to track him. Suddenly, the protagonist's heart starts pounding. This feeling, his body was beginning to evolve again. While spitting blood and groaning in pain, he acquired new abilities. The special skill, Bloodline, Pure Blood, evolves into Bloodline, True Blood. Due to the effects of hybrid evolution, he gains enlightenment and acquires the skill, Blood Flow Amplification. His recovery ability has transcended its limits, and the skilled regeneration has evolved into hyper-regeneration. Finally, he has become a True Blood and gained some new abilities. Let's test what they do. He makes a deep cut on himself and within seconds his artery heals. Now he can control blood and has absurd regeneration. During a fight, he can absorb the blood of enemies to recover, making him practically invincible. If a True Blood is this strong, imagine how powerful a Holy Blood might be. In the next scene, we see Jean Soren thanking someone for donating 1 million cheeses. The donor earned 1,000,000 points in her heart. She thinks this donation will allow her to buy many blood packs without worrying. Suddenly, the protagonist enters the room. They look at each other and blush. He apologizes for interrupting and tells her to continue her work. Soren, embarrassed, shouts at him to knock before entering and punches him. Soren then asks what happened. He tells her they received a letter in her name. The letter contains images and information about a group of criminal vampires. Someone mysterious sent this dossier with such valuable information. She has no idea who it could be. Perhaps the famous masked figure people keep talking about? But the only person she had discussed this with was Mr. Hines. These details came after she gave the location to Mr. Hines. Could these two be working together, or is it just a coincidence? The next day, Hines observes a house from a rooftop where a secret meeting will take place to discuss measures against the masked figure and the recent attacks. Hines uses a skill to peer inside the house but notices a blood magic barrier. On the first floor, he sees several high-level vampires emanating intense energy. Alright, let's go in. Hans will use the shadows and I'll go from above. Let's enter together and wipe them all out. Hines enters through the window like a scene from an action movie. Prepare yourselves, you criminal bastards. But when he looks, there are no vampires on the first floor. Suddenly, the wall begins to crack and a voice claims, "I would have loved to capture the masked one, but only some random vampire appeared. No problem, we'll hunt down this mosquito. Beta 1 Beta Shin, do you recognize this vampire? We don't know him. He seems to be level 7 but he's entirely unfamiliar. It looks like this vampire came from somewhere unknown." Hines recalls the name Beta from the vampire memories he absorbed. Their leader is called Alpha, while the others are Betas and Gammas. Both Betas are here today. The big problem is the masked members. Perhaps they belong to the secret divine society I've been searching for. I can't sense their energy, they're using a strong skill to conceal it. For now, get this bastard out of my sight, and, of course, the one hiding in the shadows. They point toward Hans. Hines is surprised they know about the shadow. "Since you're so eager, I'll end you right now," Hines says, irritated, with veins pulsing. Using the skilled blood flow amplification and acceleration, he quickly jumps on the vampires, draining their blood. The other vampires are shocked to see Hines cannibalizing his own kind, which is unacceptable. Hans, meanwhile, summons skeletons from the shadows. One vampire tries to flee, begging for his life, but Hans appears in front of him, saying, "You're not the only ones who can create barriers. From now on we'll perform the dance of death, where there's no place to run." And so, the dance of death begins. Vampires lose their lives one after another. Beta 1 is stunned by the strength of this unknown vampire. This power doesn't make sense, he's only level 6 or 7. There must be some trick. One charges at Hines, but Hines uses his extended claws to stab one. One, however, hardens his skin like crystal to block the attack. Realizing the enemy blocked him, Hines decides to increase his strength and lands a heavy punch on one's chest. One is shocked to see his crystal armor shatter, something that had never happened in combat before. Recognizing Hines's superior strength and speed, one orders the other vampires to assist him. Hines taunts, "Do you think these small fries will stop me?" With open hands, Hines releases jets of blood, piercing one's subordinates. Enraged, one seizes the moment while Hines's hands are occupied, slicing off one of Hines's arms with a sharp strike. But it's useless. Hines absorbs blood from the fallen vampires and regenerates his arm instantly. Gaining a new skill, invisibility, Hines disappears in front of one, reappearing behind him and driving his hand into one's body, humorously described as into the vampire's butt. "Checkmate," Hines declares as he begins to absorb one's blood. New vampiric factor collected. The skilled blood magic evolves into the special skill Mystery of Blood. Mystery of Blood absorbs subordinate skills, Blood Bloom, and Blood Flow Amplification. Hines feels the surge of power, now able to control all abilities with sheer will and manipulate them rapidly. Beta Shin curses Hines for devouring his own race, calling him a corrupted bloodline, and blaming his strange abilities on it. Hines responds, "So what? Are you just going to keep yelling nonsense all day? Why don't you come at me like your brother did? Or are you too scared for that?" Beta Shin charges at him, shouting, "Bastard!" Hines uses Mystery of Blood and traps Shin with blood chains. Shin continues cursing, saying, "These tricks are unfair." "Unfair tricks? That stings a little," Hines replies sarcastically. "Let me tell you something too. Checkmate." He slices the vampire's neck. As Hines absorbs Shin's blood, the other vampires are terrified, muttering, "This vampire is insane." Who would have thought the masked one would have such a strong helper? Prepare the orb, we need to deal with him now, says one assistant. One of them casts a spell and launches it at Heinz. At that moment Hans appears saying, "That's an interesting spell," and reflects it back at the vampire who cast it. The other assistant, now terrified, says, "The enemies are too strong. There's no hope, we need to flee." The leader, hearing this, declares, "We're not running," and uses a skill on the subordinate, saying, "You've been useful until now, but you'll be even more useful by dying for the Society of Divine Retribution. Go and die for freedom." The leader then uses a spatial manipulation skill to escape. Hans notices something strange about the vampire left behind. Auto-destruction mechanisms? And abandoning your subordinates on your own? What an irresponsible leader. He thought this spell would force me to leave the battlefield. What a pity, it's nothing, Hans says. Inspecting the vampire's body, he observes, there are 2 energy orbs attached to him. If they are removed, Hans continues, I control the rules of death here. Do you think you can escape death in my presence? Meanwhile, the leader is teleported to an unknown location. It was tough escaping such a strong barrier, and the magic didn't work properly. But it was enough to survive, he says. Suddenly Hans appears behind him. So, you were here, leader? Hans contemplates playing with the leader for a while but decides it's better to act decisively to prevent another escape. Hans places his thumb on the leader's forehead to access his memories about the Society of Divine Retribution. However, a defense mechanism activates, an unknown memory technology from the Society. Hans is transported to the mental realm. A mysterious voice echoes, saying it didn't expect Hans to reach the realm. Hans questions, so you've been watching this whole show from inside your own mind? He realizes this is the leader of the Society of Divine Retribution. That's correct, Haho Mask. Why don't you join us? The entity asks. Hans considers and asks, what's the Society's goal? The mysterious entity replies, it's simple. Freedom for the returned and creating a world led by them. Hans questions, an organization formed so recently already has such ambitious goals? Recently, the entity retorts. We've existed for a long time. We've been fighting for our freedom endlessly. Hans presses further, so you've been committing acts of terror for ages, haven't you? Answer me. A system alert activates. Warning, Mind Hub is regulating emotions. Repeatedly it states, Mind Hub is regulating emotions. Hans' heartbeat quickens. The entity asks, does that even matter? I hope you make the sensible choice, Masked One. Hans tries to punch the entity but hits an invisible wall. So that's your choice? The entity responds. Here, in the mental realm, mental strength surpasses magical power. You'll never defeat me here. Hans laughs, saying, is mental strength really the deciding factor here? In that case, combining all of our consciousnesses, you're the one who can't defeat us here. Meanwhile, Heinrich trains intensely. 1,021. 1,022, he mutters while lifting a gargoyle statue. Finally, a system message appears. The entity has achieved the conditions and acquired the special skill, Blessing, Sturdy Body. The entity gains the skill, Out Erica Sacred Art, through repeated training, achieving a power level equivalent to a high priest. Heinrich reflects that he didn't expect to surpass his limits with mere physical training. With these new abilities, I've earned the qualifications to be a holy knight. Maybe it's time to discuss the next step. Suddenly he hears a feminine voice, it's the saint in the flower garden. Despite being the saint with the greatest divine power, she appears like an ordinary girl. Hello, Sir Heinrich, she says with a smile. Her radiant aura of divine power betrays her otherwise ordinary appearance. Heinrich greets her and asks, why are you alone in a place like this? The saint replies, I was just watching a ladybug in this field of flowers. The little creature was so cute I lost track of time. Heinrich had thought she was admiring the flowers, only to find out it was the ladybug. The saint notices something different. Sir Heinrich, you've finally received the blessing. Congratulations. The saint's perceptiveness amazes him. Blessing, Sturdy Body is not something achieved with outside help, she remarks, praising his accomplishment. Thank you, saint, he replies. Well, it's time to work. Shall we go to the chapel together, Sir Heinrich? Of course, saint, he answers. Through his studies of history, Heinrich learned why the saint is so obsessed with Hans. In the distant past, the first immortal king turned half the continent into a land of death. Multiple nations united to defeat him. However, his heart was stolen by an ally, a black mage. He reincarnated as the second immortal king, causing the fall of the Great Western Empire. Although the chosen of the order managed to destroy his heart, it was split into 3 parts and scattered across the continent. Every time an immortal king crisis arose, the great divine order was always at the forefront. They knew the heavy toll it took, with countless lives lost along the way. For the saint, who sees her followers as family, her intense hostility and obsession with the immortal king are natural. For now, though, Heinrich reflects, there's no need to worry much about that. The current immortal king is surprisingly gentle and kind-hearted. Alright, back to the main topic. Let's focus my mental strength on Hans. Upon changing the scene, we see a vampire spitting blood. Your Excellency the Arbiter, are you alright? Get out of my way, you're disrupting my focus. This can't be happening, I'm being pushed back. Me? In a battle in the mental realm? How is this possible? Hans begins punching the mysterious entity. At first, Hans had complete control of the battle, but now the entity is growing exponentially stronger to an uncontrollable degree, as if it were channeling the strength of multiple individuals. How did I lose? This isn't just a difference in the mental realm, it's a difference in skill? There's no way my mental abilities are inferior. This is no time to waste on this. An urgent directive is issued to the Soul Branch. Immediately cease all operations, erase all information and go into hiding. Especially for the Korean branch, this is the top priority right now. Inform the commander, a monster is in Korea. Even with Mind Hub and Serenity, Hans wasn't a weak opponent. His resilience would require further study. However, it was regrettable to lose sight of him. The system emits a new notification. The entity absorbs someone else's karma, transforming the skill black magic into the special skill path of sorcery. Thus, this fragment is the remnant of something scattered across the mental realm. Absorbing its karma means my growth comes at the cost of its reduction in power. That's fine. By reading the memories left behind in this fragment, I'll track the hidden members of the Society of Divine Retribution. So this is the Korean branch of the Divine Society, hidden deep in the forest. I won't give them any chance to escape, says Hans, blending into the shadows. I'll uncover all your secrets now. Suddenly, a scientist appears. They told me to evacuate as quickly as possible, but they didn't mention that a monster like this was coming. So the evacuation order had already been issued? At least my effort wasn't completely wasted. Look at you, trying to save a piece of paper with some data, only to hand everything over to me. Let's see what you've been up to for so long. Wait, this incident. I will never forgive you, Society of Divine Retribution. You're the ones who stole my life. I'll hunt down and kill every one of you without exception. Heinz refines excess blood stored in his body into blood crystals, which he plans to use to enhance other vampires' vampiric factors. This refined blood connects these vampires to Heinz, creating a hybrid clan loyal to him. Those who resist will be crushed. The next day, Jean Soren is stunned to learn that Heinz has eliminated all vampires in the region and intends to meet with the leader of the moderate faction. Wait a minute, this is a lot to process. I need to verify these facts, Soren says. Verify? What do you think of this as proof? Heinz interrupts, demonstrating his overwhelming power. Soren is terrified by such a display of power. She knew he was strong, but not at this level. He must be at least level 7 or higher. I can't even gauge his strength. Very well, I will contact them now. To think that you eliminated all the vampires with your own hands and now intend to absorb the rest. This is quite an unusual proposal, almost bordering on unsettling. I have no intention of giving absurd orders. The goal is simply to maintain peace and order, to track connections of the Divine Retribution Society, and eradicate every member. Don't you think these two objectives are contradictory? That depends on where you set the standard. It seems she won't be easily persuaded. If she refuses, then we'll have to use force. Fine deal. What are you relying on to accept so quickly? What am I relying on? Of course, I'm relying on myself. I will help you absorb all the remaining vampires, Mr. Heinz. You can start with Soren. She will be the bridge between us. Very well, that's exactly what I wanted. But I don't think that will be the case for them. Alright, then we should begin sharing the details of the discussion, how to absorb the vampires and about the new faction you mentioned. Let's start with absorbing the remaining vampires and becoming the leader of a new faction. That will be the first step toward taking control of the Blood Pact. Stay still. If you move, you might get hurt. Now let's begin. Heinz inserts a blood crystal into Soren. She feels the refined blood entering her body, healing it, making her blood pulse faster. Her muscles and bones are expanding. This feeling, it's as if she's been reborn. She doesn't feel like she's in her old body anymore. The refined blood crystal reaches a maximum of 30% enhancement. That's not a small number, but it continues. Soren then asks what they should do next. Lord? Heinz asks. Yes, Lord. You're creating a new clan now. Now that a lineage has been stabilized on this land, we'll need to find a new name for our clan. Do you have something in mind, Lord? A name? I'd like something that stands out, something different. Vampires who accept the blood crystals are renamed heterosis, embodying the hybrid vigor of Heinz's blood. He declares, beware remaining vampires. I will hunt you down and make you the strongest within the blood pact. Returning to the original avatar, Heinz's issues are being addressed, but it's still not enough to bring down the Divine Retribution Society. They've vanished from Korea, but they are a global organization. More preparation will be necessary, enough to eliminate them all at once when they reveal themselves. For now, it will be necessary to expand influence in the other world as well and accumulate karma. For example, events like wars and terrorism. Wait, what the hell am I thinking? If I do that, I'll be killing innocent people. Is there any way to create accidents without anyone getting hurt? Maybe I should give up. As the protagonist glances at a book, an idea emerges. The Demon King Hans wants to destroy humanity, and the hero Heinrich will defend it. Hans will use corrupt nobles to expand his forces of evil, while Heinrich defends against malevolent organizations and becomes a hero. This is a perfect story, gaining karma points from both bad people and good people. It's a win-win game. Alright, let's take this one step at a time. Harley, it's time to act. A system message appears. Harley is the fifth avatar of Han Seong-gyeun's adaptation. He can adapt quickly and efficiently to extreme conditions. I intended to strengthen him appropriately after creating him as a new avatar with an extended limit. In the meantime, I'd like to further develop his adaptation. There might be a way. Yes, this is the right path. After exterminating the remaining members of the Divine Retribution Society, experiments were being conducted underground. They were transplanting demon bodies into humans, something akin to chimeras. Among the samples, the item I was searching for was this. Something that would contribute to stronger absorption, more powerful traits, and evolution. Dragon blood. If Harley can adapt to this process and I manipulate some discoveries I've made, he will become a living weapon, a biological creature.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it really helps. And for more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see another part. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next time!